Sweet friends, how do you do today? And how do you woo today? And how do you woo you today? Welcome to How to Woo, a podcast on love and making love so we can make sure we're making lives we love. I am your host, Luna Robbie. I am a multi-artist and creative guide obsessed with learning about life, especially from other humans direct, because we all have our own unique perspective and wisdom. So here we are again for some deep listening and a little vicrophilia so we can stay excited about life and co-create a world where taking care of each other is the norm. Let's dive in. Our guest today is a 32-year-old cis woman. She is white, but also Latina. A bisexual polyamorous person who has been married for 8 years. She loves talking about relationship dynamics. Me too! She loves the fluidity of sexuality and relationships, curiosity and exploration, especially when in long-term relationships. I am so excited to talk today. An artist and illustrator originally from California, now living in Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome, Avalon!
Hi, nice to be here.
I am so excited to have you here. Can you start off by telling us, how do you love yourself? Or how do you woo you?
Oh, that feels like such a deep personal question right off the get-go. I love it. And it also kind of makes me want to cry a little bit. What a question to start off on. But I woo me by soft talking to like inner child me about the things that I enjoy. So it's been a lot of self-work, but being able to be patient with myself and kind of kinder to myself when I'm feeling perfectionist about life. And it can be rough, but it's very fun. But in other ways, I think I woo myself by going on walks. It's as cheesy as it sounds, trying to like take in like physical feelings, like the wind on my face, the like fresh air like in my nose. Like it's very, very physical stuff is kind of how I woo myself. Whether
I
that's
love that.
scent, touch, all that.
Yeah.
I love visual stuff. I have to be surrounded by like beauty, whatever that means. It doesn't like fit into one box, but it's like I need inspiration around me constantly so that way I feel, I don't know, at ease, at peace.
I totally connect with that. Can I reveal to people that I asked your astrological sign before this?
Yes, absolutely.
Can I say what it is?
Yeah, go ahead.
We were talking just beforehand, and you revealed that you were a Libra, and Venus rules Libra and Taurus. So those of us, and I am a Taurus, so I feel you on the need for beauty. Like it's like I just want, I appreciate it, I want it, and that sensuality, especially of nature, is really incredible. When it comes to self-love, how did you learn about that? Like, and how, if at all, was that modeled for you? And how did you learn to kind of tend to your own needs?
It's kind of rough because I don't think I actually learned to take care of myself emotionally or at least not in a healthy way for like until I was probably in my mid 20s, but when I actually met my partner, funnily enough. Because I am very much a people pleaser. I very much stepped into the role of parenting my parents. So I took care of the people around me more than I ever took care of myself.
Mm.
So as I was began to date my partner, he was like my first relationship ever. I was very conscientious and knowing that I couldn't do that. Otherwise, I would feel miserable because I was already feeling the kind of stressor of that after all of the years of doing it.
Mm.
So it became a very conscientious, okay, like it's kind of meditative where you're like, how am I feeling right now? Is this okay? If it's not okay, how do we fix it? And it's just the basic questions of like, how do we make us feel okay? Us being me, Avalon,
Yeah.
the royal we.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, it's been, I wouldn't say like the journey's done, is it ever? But it's one that I continue to be very conscientious of because I can fall into the trap of trying to make everybody else happy around me constantly.
That is such a good point, and I'm so glad that you brought it up because part of my reasoning for including this is to bring consciousness to like, how am I treating myself on an ongoing basis, before we broaden out into relationships with other people. And I think in all contexts, it is easy to forget that the journey is never over. We are ever evolving beings. Could you give us a little overview of just like what that evolution has felt like for you? Like, or was there ever anything in your past that used to like really be soothing for you or kind of like an act of self, you know, so for me, sometimes I go through a phase where I'm like, a bath, and then I'll over bath myself and it doesn't work anymore, you know?
Mhm. I totally get that. You know what's really funny? I was thinking about this the other day, and it's gonna sound, I think, kinda cheesy, and maybe I mean, I'm hoping, like, anybody can relate, but I feel like it's a very neurodivergent thing to have done, is when I was a teenager and, like, a young adult, what I would do is I would get my Walkman or my iPod, I'd pop those AirPods in, and I would go outside, and I would sit, and I would just pretend that I was in a really moody music video to kind of feel the feelings that were really, like,
Yes.
temperamental or like the I didn't know how to express, so I was like, I'll put it on to like whatever, Kelly Clarkson is saying or something, just something to help me process the feeling. And it was very, I don't know, it really helps to kind of just like act like someone's watching you, but no one isn't or no one is. And I don't know, it was a very weird meditative thing that like I've been thinking a lot about lately because I was like, why did I do that? And I was like, it's just a way to escape, but also feel your feelings, but kind of in a safer way where you're not kinda coming at them and confronting them, but not allowing them to, like, pile it in your chest, you know?
Yes, yes, that's a brilliant self-soothing way of processing whatever's going on. I mean, my version. Also, we're very neurodivergent on this podcast. Not every guest who comes on, but in general, I would say the baseline is, you know, who else wants to get people together and ask them the same questions about sex forever? 6 years going on now.
Right?
But I think that need to feel and to self-express and to learn through the creative expression of others, I think is such a key
Mhm.
component. I love that you mentioned that. I'd love to hear just a little bit more about your sensorial delights. You know, you mentioned some natural stuff, but what else? Like, if you want to go through like sight, sound, taste, touch.
I feel like this is so typical, at least with all my friend groups now. Big light, turn that shit off. I have mood lighting everywhere. I want,
Yes.
like it can be fake candles, it can be I just bought a light machine that acts like it's, like, the constellation on your ceiling. I'm like, "Anything but a normal light, I'm here for it." I wanna feel like I'm in, like, a '90s movie set, you know what I mean? Where, like, everything is cozy. And since I'm like an artist, I think like a lot of my surrounding, it doesn't need to be picture perfect. It doesn't need to be like everything doesn't need to be put away, but I need things to feel lived in. I need them to feel like there's personality around me. So like I'm set up in my studio right now and it's a mess, but there's paintings on the wall, there's like fan art of things I enjoy. There's things that if I look up and I go like, "Oh yeah, I like that," cuz like visually I need the reminder of the things that I loved
Yeah.
to help me. And then, like, other senses, like smell smell's such a big deal. I can smell when something's off a mile away. I'm like, "There's something in the trash. It's about to go off. We need this out of the house now." 'Cause
That's a
I want it to
superpower.
smell. I know, I hate it's a superpower, but it's terrible because 'cause I'll be around the house going like, "Oh," like, I'll be like, "Do you smell that?" And Nick, my partner, will be like, he never smells anything, and I'm just like and I'll just sniff around the house. I'm like, "It was this one trash can," and I always have, like, a wax melt going. I'm very fond of Christmassy smells, but, like, not overly Christmas. Like, I love a good tree. Like, it doesn't have to be a fir tree, but I want a tree smell, a little
Mm.
bit of vanilla. I'm still trying to find my perfect scent because I found one, like, a year ago at Target. They don't make it anymore, and so we go through phases, but sometimes, like, they can teeter into being too soapy, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, the whole vibe's off. It's it's the wonderfulness of senses. Like, it can teeter so quickly.
Yeah.
Um and then physical stuff, like, as I've gotten older, I feel like I've realized that there's a lot of things that I would put up with, and then now that I don't have to put up with them, this is such a, like, therapeutic thing to say, but just, like, I don't have to put up with them anymore, so I don't. So I'm like, "Give me soft clothes, I don't want it too tight on me, I just want to feel luxurious," and I found that, like, I love thrifting, like, vintage clothing because like, old wool, I'm like, oh.
Mm.
Bury me in it, it's so cozy, it keeps me regulated so I'm not too hot, not too cold. Like, it's very I feel as I'm saying it out loud, like, I feel like a lot of my senses are very Goldilocks. I'm like, "I have to find the just right," and once we find that happy medium, like, we're set with everything else.
I totally get that. I can't be slightly uncomfortable. Like in a negotiation,
Yes.
I might be in a situation where I might receive a lot of pain if it's chosen, but if it's like an accidental or
Mhm.
like unnecessary discomfort, uh-uh.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so funny that you say that too, because I think about, more, like, intimate versions of that when you think about, like, physical touch or sensory stuff, and it is so funny how, like, in everyday, I'm like, if I'm immediately uncomfortable, I'm like, "No," but if I'm attempting to kind of not overcome an uncomfy thing, but, like, if you're trying to be open to something, you're like, "You know what? Well, let's see where that sensory goes. Maybe it's not so bad in this context alone."
Totally. Totally. That's such a good point.
It's fun to tiptoe. That's my favorite,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
little mind palace thing.
When you are romancing yourself, well, I guess that's a question. Does
Mhm.
it feel romantic? What does your kind of like gifting
Hmm.
yourself, when you are doing these things for yourself, what is the contextual feeling like inside of you?
That's such a good question that I've never been asked before, so I'm not even sure I can articulate it.
I'm trying to figure out romance. Do you experience romance in general?
I do, but it's hard to explain. Still on the journey of understanding that, I think,
Oh, me too.
because I you know, I grew up reading so many romance books as one does and seeing so many movies, and so I still struggle with what I've been I don't wanna say taught, but it is you're kind of being taught it, but I feel like there's a better word there. Um,
Absorbed? I don't know. Absorbing
yeah,
culture,
absorbed is
maybe?
good. Yeah, absorbing what you think romance should be and what is romantic versus what actually arouses you and what also, like, just makes your brain go like, "Yes, that makes me feel loved and happy," and all of these things. So I think for me, when I focus on just myself, I think the things that make me feel romanced are just taking everything slow, like being very patient and very like I'm probably going to say this so much this podcast. Expectations are a thing I struggle with constantly. So my whole motto for like anything romantic or any kind of interpersonal relationship is like we must set expectations and also you must kind of have no expectations. It's a very fine line of knowing where we're at. Communication is so important. So I try to practice that with myself as well, where I'll check in and just be like, "Why are we feeling this way? What expectation are we can like, why is it making us react in the way that we are? And can we kind of rewind and figure it out?" And it makes me laugh just because I've gone to therapy for like the last like 5 or 6 years, and my therapist always likes to tease me. She's like, "You're always trying to find the why," and I'm like, I know it won't solve anything at the end of the day, but it's useful. It's useful information
Mm.
if I can get like not to the old adage why, but just like oh, if I can find out why I react this way or that I'm feeling this way, then I can address and perhaps change something or make myself feel more comfortable in a
Mm.
healthy way.
Would you say that, like, I like to use the term noodling to mean just like brainstorming or wondering, oftentimes aloud about these things. Is that part of your own, like, romancing yourself or wooing thyself?
I think so. I feel like a lot of the romancing I do for myself is so subconscious. So that's
Mm.
why it's hard to answer these questions.
Hmm, hmm.
Um,
No, they are hard. I don't know. They're brand new. We're figuring them out together.
I think that there I think that a lot of I'm a very introspective person, so I think a lot of time is spent like good or bad ruminating in who I am and what I like. So I think once I find something that kind of scratches the itch, pun intended, perhaps,
Yeah.
it becomes a like we latch onto that and we go, okay, now I need to either learn everything about that or we need to dive in. We need to find out how far this goes. Kind of moment of like the moment you feel that kind of spark of like I think it must just be curiosity, but I feel like there's a stronger word or something more fun. But just the moment the curiosity hits, you're like, oh, this is what's been missing. This is ah, I didn't know this. It's like it's the very cheesy, like it awoke something in me. Here we are moment. And those are the ones I try to continue to feel because it's so fun to have that feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Okay, on that note, but maybe switching gears just a tiny little bit, how do you like
Hmm.
to receive love from others? How do you like to be wooed?
Uh, I it's so hard to again bring it back to me, unfortunately. I'm a very bad at receiving love because I don't want to feel like I'm a burden.
You're
RIP.
practicing.
So I I'm trying to get better about it with my partner, and it's been a great long journey with us. But to be wooed, I try to allow myself to be taken care of, to whether that's like he gets me a glass of water, whether that's, him tucking me in if I've fallen asleep on the sofa, or, your harder things where like I've had a bad day and I don't want him to see me in a low place, and just let him just be like, no, I can see you, you're here, we're fine, that kind of stuff. I think that really heals and soothes my soul, but it's very hard for me to receive at the same time. But that definitely nourishes and makes me feel loved, both like, unconditionally perhaps, but also in a romantic way, because it makes you feel safe, or makes not you, me. It makes me feel safe with my partner.
Yeah. Well, you feeling safe, even if I'm only just meeting you, does also make me feel safe, because I think a world of safety is good. And I am curious, because I've never been in an 8-year-long marriage. And can I ask, how long were you together before the marriage parts?
I actually totally mishap on that. We've been together for 8 years, but we've been
Okay, great.
married like 2 or 3 now. It's one
Okay,
of those things where we've been together for so long.
great, great, great. Okay. So married for 8 years. That's so funny, because my brain almost was like 8-year relationship. Then I was like, no, correct it. That's so funny. She knew. She knew.
Yeah, she knew. Yes.
So I've never been in a relationship of 8 years. Could you like take us through your woo timeline? Like, do you remember what were the sparks at the beginning that allowed you to let this person in?
Yes. So it's a funny story. So, where to begin? Basically, I was not a romantic person, or, well, I mean, I was romantic in my head. I had very romantic aspirations, but I never dated, nor was I physically in like romantic relationships at all in my teen years. So in my early 20s, I decided, I'm like, you know what? We got to get out there. We got to date. Nobody's asked us out. That's okay. We'll figure it out. And so I got on a dating app. Back in the day, it was OkCupid. It's still around, but it's so
Oh
different
yeah.
than what it was. It's so different. And I had just moved out of a small mountain town. And I was like, well, I'm out of that tiny ass high school. Never gonna see any of these people again. Huzzah! And then I got on the dating app, connected with this person that we watched similar shows, was kind of how we first started talking. And then he's like, "Hey, did you go to blah 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 high school?" And I was like, "Stalker, murderer, where are we right now?" And he's like, and I'm like, "Maybe. Why?" Why do you ask? Because he didn't look familiar to me. And he's like, oh, well, I went there, like, I graduated blah 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 year. And I was like, I opened up my yearbook, there he is. And I'm like, and it was a hilarious moment of like, okay, you're a real person, because I can validate that you went to the school that I also went to. But what's funny is it's so small, and we had so many mutual friends, never once interacted. But he's like, I remember you used to wear pirate hats occasionally to school. And I was like, great, I'm glad I made a lasting impression.
I love that. I love
was
that.
like, I was a theater kid. What can I say? So
did I dress up as Captain Jack Sparrow more than once?
Hey, Pirates of the Caribbean was my unknown at the time by awakening. Okay. So
Me too.
like, did I want to be Keira Knightley? Did I want Keira Knightley? Did I want to be Will Turner? Did I want to like, there was too many hot people in that movie.
Why didn't they have a threesome? I don't get it. Okay.
Now that you think about it, like throuple, I don't understand. Why are we limiting ourselves?
Exactly.
So that's kind of how we got the ball rolling. But I think what connected us, other than the hilarity that I was like, I'm never going to date anyone from my high school, ha ha ha, to that, was hilarious. And I guess it was really a blessing that we didn't know each other very well. Like, I don't think I even ever spoke to him. I remembered seeing him in school. He was one of those guys that got really buff but didn't play sports. So I was like, you're weird. I don't understand what that's about, but you do you. And not to tease him on blast on a podcast, but it's because he was very much bi and didn't understand it. So he was also kind of peacocking for the males around him. And I was like, that totally makes sense. Mm-hmm. But once you're on your own journeys. Yes, I love that for him. And I'm like, you would have thrived in a theater kid environment. I'm so sorry that you weren't there.
We don't know until we know.
Uh-huh. So we talked for like about a couple days. It was very nice. It was very because I've tried to date since as we are in a poly relationship, and
Mhm.
uh in retrospect it's very funny because with me and him we did not really talk sexually at all for like the first couple days. It was very much like, oh, have you watched this show? Let's talk about it because it just came out. It was very platonic, like, getting to know somebody like you would if you met them like at a class or something.
Yeah.
And then when we met up, and it's the only time I've really felt it in quite some time, which is kind of both saddening, but also like, I guess this means that, it's a little bit of like the soulmate thing where I'm like, oh, I feel good. I feel like I've chosen the right person. And as I was immediately very attracted to him, which
Mm.
doesn't happen for me very often. As I've tried to explore further, and just could feel the vibes where, you just felt that I felt chemistry like immediately with him once we met in person, which was just a blessing because sometimes you just don't know when you're going on dates.
Yes.
And so I could tell immediately that I wanted to spend more time with him. So because I had brought my friend to make sure that I didn't get murdered. You never know.
Mhm.
And so like dropped her back home, and then we went for like lunch, ended up chatting. We ended up spending like the whole day together, went to a movie at the very end. We went to like a dollar theater that was playing. I don't know if you remember the movie Pan. Hugh Jackman was in it. It was a Peter Pan adaptation. It was
Yeah.
not very good. I'm not gonna lie. We're sitting there the whole time going like, what are we watching? But I'm just sitting there like close to him, like, oh my God, I wanna kiss this person so badly. And I don't know how to do it because I've never kissed anybody. So I'm just sitting there, and it just felt very like, I still look back on it so fondly because it was just it felt romantic, even though we're doing cheesy, watching a terrible movie at a dollar theater. Like it's ingrained in my brain as a very romantic, because it was and is moment. And after that, we were pretty much inseparable. We were just like, this went so well. But I was, again, like, it's weird because it was very romantic, but I was very logistical about everything. I was like, we're not exclusive yet, so don't worry about it. But like, are you tested? I was very like educated by that point to know what I was looking for. Just because I listened to a lot of sex podcasts. I was a young 20 something. So I was aware of what I wanted to search for in a romantic partner. And I was also aware that I might get the like first love like blinders. So I was very like, I don't want to be blind to things I don't want. I want to be here in this moment, but I don't want to be like, oh, that's a red flag. Who cares?
Mm.
Because I wanted to make sure I was safe. And I think we just met each other at the same time, at the perfect time, because both of us kind of sat down and said, I was like, I have no plans to get married. I don't know if I want kids. So if that's something you're looking for, bye. Like, I cannot provide that for you. And he's like, great. I don't want to get married either. And I'm like, great. So we can see where this goes.
Amazing.
And yeah. And then I think we had dated for like 3 months, and he was the one to drop the L bomb. It was just like, I love you. I can't even remember how he said it, to be honest, because I was so overwhelmed in the moment. And my response to that was like, well, I like love you too. And he was like, are you sure? I'm like, no, I'm sure. Like, I've been feeling for a minute. I'm pretty sure this is what love is, right? Yeah, I think that's what this is. Like, you would know better. You've dated other people. Is this what love is? I don't know. But
Relatable.
he was very Yeah, he was very patient, he was, the best kind of, I think, partner. Because I was also very like, on the first date, I was like, "Hey, I'm very attracted to you, but I've never kissed a person, I've never had sex. I have birth control, I know what is safe for us to do. Like, who have you been with?
Yeah.
When? Da, da, da." He was very, like, not put off by it, but he was just like, "Wow, like, let me get the checklist, ma'am, and I can I can rest assured all your fears." And it's honestly, like, not to talk him up, but he's been the best partner I've had, when it comes to those check-ins to be like, "Is this okay?" Sometimes I think he's a little bit too slow, but it's good. I'd rather that than, like, the too gung ho-ness of,
Yeah.
learning each other's bodies.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, I know that
Yeah.
I need slow, cautious partners, or partners that will hold me back so that I don't just like burn through everything with all my excitement, you know?
I just learned that about myself this time too, or this, like,
Yeah.
this last year as I've dated other people. I'm like, "Oh, it turns out you don't put guardrails up." There are
Yes.
no rails. We just go.
I'm slowly learning that over and over again. So I don't know if that counts as well, learning it in many different ways. I'm a person that has to learn the same
Yeah.
lesson in specific contexts. I love that being like, no marriage, also here's all my needs and boundaries is part of your wooing story. And it sounds like that has like
Yeah.
evolved into a really cool, beautiful connection.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I feel like weirdly proud of in retrospect. Like now that we've been together for almost a decade, it's one of the weird things where like I didn't set out to try to have a like hyper communicative or like I think I just really because so unsure in high school, right? Like I had crushes on people, but it was always like, oh, do they like me? Do they not? I think I was so over that like anxiety that I was like, I need to know if you like me. I need to know what you think we're doing here because I don't like this. I don't want to drive myself insane by thinking in circles like what does he mean when he says that? Like I was not about it. I was like if this guy even if like when we first started dating I was like if this is just a like I want an emotional connection but if this ends up being kind of like I'm learning what I like physically with someone, but they're not like the love of my life. I'm fine with that. As long as we're both on the same page that like, we need wooing, like you said. Like I don't want it to be a one and done. I want it to feel like a safe place to explore that with somebody. And he was on the same page. So I think it was just really nice because I think weirdly enough as we set our expectations, we were also setting none at the same time, where it
Yeah.
was just like, oh, cool. Like, we'll just see what happens. And like, until we don't like each other anymore, we won't stop dating. And then it just never stopped.
I love that so much because it sounds like the expectation is the exploration that includes ongoing communication.
Yes. And I think, what I find very funny about our relationship as well is at the time, I, I didn't know that I was sexually fluid. I was just a compet basically. I was just like, I know I find men attractive, so let's just go with that. And I don't remember how quickly into the relationship he came out to me, but I don't remember if it was the before I love yous. I don't remember if it was like serious, but I know that like at some point, like I remember it very vividly. We were in the car driving in California traffic, and he was really quiet, and I was just vibing. I love music. I'm not really anxious about anything. And then he just goes, "I have to tell you something," and I was like, "Okay, like what could it be? We've been dating for a while now," and he's like, you know, I've never told anybody this. And I was like, oh God, it's going to be something terribly awful. Like, I don't know what this could even be. And I don't remember exactly how he put it, but he basically was like, I'm pretty sure I'm bisexual. Like, I've slept with men before. Like, told me a little bit about his journey. And then I was just like, oh. And then I was like, I guess people, yeah, that's cool, man. I don't judge you for it. I'm glad you got to explore your sexuality. That's so cool. Tell me more, actually. And it was just an interesting moment of like he came out to me and then I was like, what am I? Like maybe I'm not straight then either. It's a little bit of like not copycat, but just like I hadn't thought to question it because I was going
Totally.
in this present relationship. I am with a man, a cis man. So like if this is what it's gonna be because we're in love, then I guess this is just all it's gonna be. And a fascinating place to sit in for a while. And then I think somewhere along that journey, because again, it's been almost a decade, so I could not tell you specific plot points here, but I know that I think during that I was like, you know what, I think I might be bi too. I don't know, but I'm never gonna act on it because I'm with you. And then about probably 4 years into our relationship, because that was about the time that like both of us, I was nearly done with school. He was trying to figure out what he wanted to do as a career. So stuff is getting more serious. We're young adults in the world. And we had a hard conversation of what we wanted our lives to look like. And we're like, well, I think we want to be together. And like, we had wiggle room. So that was to like if I needed to follow him somewhere or if he wanted to follow me somewhere. And then that turned into him kind of being like, I don't want to break up with you, but I don't think I can not have sex with men and I don't want to cheat on you. And I was like, okay, well then. And at that point, I hadn't heard about open stuff. I knew about swingers because unfortunately, I accidentally saw stuff with my parents once. Trauma. So, my parents, like, They, like, not to make fun of Gen X, but like they go camping and people are just swapping spouses. That's all they're doing. And unfortunately, they take their kids along. And so, like, late at night, if you wake up at the wrong time, you see stuff you shouldn't have been seeing. So I knew that people were not always monogamous, but I mean, other than, I'm sure I heard it on like a sex podcast about non-monogamy and poly and stuff, but like I had never put much thought into it.
Yeah.
So
There's a big difference between hearing about it vaguely and then having it like drop into your own lap.
yeah, so it became a very interesting, like, I say interesting because I love talking stuff out like this. It's so fun to like
Me too.
like it's like a puzzle.
Yeah.
So he presented that and he was like, it's not an ultimatum, but this is just how I'm feeling. And I was like, okay, well then, like, what would that look like? Like, what is it that you're like I don't feel like, it was a moment of like almost relief, because I didn't feel like I wasn't enough. So that knowing that I didn't feel jealous or that I didn't feel like I wasn't enough was such a like, oh, I feel very safe. That's kind of cool that I don't feel like threatened by this. So it's like, well, then if I'm not threatened, how do we make it work? And then that became kind of just going, okay, well, then if you want to pursue that, I mean, that's part of you. Like, I would never want to stop that part of you. Then you can, as long as, we're safe about it. That's really my thing. And I was like, I'm not super interested in dating other people or like sleeping with other people. But if that's something that you feel like you need, then that's fine, as long as we talk about it. And then that's, progressed to understanding what we wanted out of him, because he was very much like, oh, I think it's just sex. And I was like, okay, I know for me I couldn't do just that, but like if you can, I support that if that's what you want to do, but no judgment. If it gets messy, we'll just have to take it as it comes, basically. And so that's been that I think like that moment was such a crucial moment in our relationship, to kind of just understand that like we weren't I don't know, we weren't blind to other desires that would persist. Because I feel very strongly that relationships, because I see a lot of people and friends that have gone through relationships where it's just like you can't even look at another person without it being an issue. And I was very much just like, I don't want to have space or room in my brain for that kind of insecurity or jealousy.
Yes.
I'm open to tackling it. Like, things happen, you might feel insecure or jealous, but I don't want to be in a space where I don't trust my partner, is kind of the baseline. Like, if I don't trust you, then bye-bye. I don't know. Like, I don't have space for it. So yeah, it was such a fun conversation to look back on, to see like we were such babies at not, baby kind of like, we don't know what we want, but we know we don't want to stop seeing each other and that we love each other so much. And then how do we transform that into something different? And then of course it took like a year or two before anything even happened. But we had, I think like there's a lot of peace of mind knowing that like, there's no, I don't want to call it a repercussion or a consequence, but like knowing that maybe no judgment. There's no judgment if things should arise. And so that was just a really nice thing. And it's just so funny that I think he's introduced a lot of options to me, but then I'm like, let's dive in. Let's educate ourselves on like where we can go from here and the relationships dynamics that it can be. And he was just very, I think, perplexed and happy at the same time, just because like I think you expect that kind of conversation to go like the ultimatum-y way, where it's like, oh, I can't do that anymore. Or like, that's not so much like in a like homophobic kind of way even, but just in a like, well, no, like, you're mine. You can't be with anybody else. That's weird. And instead we were very chill about it. It was very much just like, interesting. How can we progress from this point forward? And then knowing that we at the time still weren't planning on getting married, it was just like, well, who fucking cares? Like, maybe we might break up one day, so it's okay. Like, nothing is set in stone in this way that feels I don't know if permanent's the right word, because I mean, permanent is a word for it, but just kind of like, I always viewed like that kind of commitment as a trap, as that's something I could not get out of. So I was like, we don't need to. Yeah, I'm like, I don't need to be married. It's just not. And we mostly got married for like the benefits that come with being lawfully wed, more so. I mean, like it's a celebration of love as well, but we reached a point where we were just like, I don't think I'm going to ever be with one sole person for the rest of my life unless it's you. So we might as well just make it official. So it's an interesting space. I'll just say that, like, when we talked about it, it was because we would have check-ins occasionally, be like, hey, are we still feeling, we're obviously still in love, but like, is this turning into like a platonicness? Are we just roommates? Like, it's, you have those check-ins, or at least I have those
You
check-ins
do,
with
yeah.
my partner. And one time we had that check-in, and then we were talking about the logistics of being legally wed and what that meant for, like, health insurance, what that meant for taxes, what that would look like going forward if we ever wanted to buy a house, all of these things. And there was really no reason to not at that point, because we were like 6 years in. And so then I was like, so are we engaged now? And he's like, yeah, I think we're engaged now. It was a very mutual, like, not a proposal necessarily, but just a heavy discussion to being like, at the end of it, I think we are engaged. Very, very contractual almost.
I fucking love this story, and I love learning about how you approach life. And I am loving getting to know about you through how you approach this relationship. And I am in deep admiration. Like, I feel like I'm still processing this concept that you've introduced to me of expectation, no expectation. Because it sounds like it's not like no expectations in the way that I've received it from many a douchebag, which means like I'm not going to follow through on the things that I say, or like I'm going to treat you like shit, and like, why are you surprised? Because I told you no expectation, and what I hear in your description of it is it's about having a goal, a shared goal that you talk about, or having a not one target, but like a direction, a thesis statement, if you will, and that like the relationship, the connection is the unfolding, and just like having a ship, you navigate it together and you are having those discussions. So do you feel like the expectation, no expectation paradigm creates a space for like ongoing new ways to woo? Because I'm just, the flexibility of it and the like commitment to what sounds like, would you call it truth in your relationship, or just actual connection, closeness? Like, it sounds like you really want to know the person or be in, I don't know. How do you kind of like understand that as it relates to your connection?
It's like, it's so hard because, again, like, I'm very much in the middle of understanding, like, I think, as we will always be in our relationship dynamics. So since we, went from like a kind of like non-monogamy to kind of open to kind of understanding it's more of a poly thing that you're looking for, it's with Nick, who's my primary partner. I think it's just comfort. Like, there is just like, we know each other so well, and then I don't know, that's why, like, sometimes I get cheesy and go like, it feels like a soulmate thing, even though I don't know that I believe in soulmates at the same time. It's very funny in that way, where I'm just like, it's wild to me that we are able to connect and communicate so well, because we've had like maybe 2 or 3 fights our entire relationship. And I mean, a lot of that stems from me. I'm a non-confrontational person. I don't want to be yelled at, I'll cry. Like, if there's high energy, I'm usually not able to communicate. But even still, like, a lot of, like, any kind of like fight we've ever had, because it's hard for me to even call them fights, because we're not being mean to each other during them. It's more just like there's a heavy miscommunication happening.
Yeah.
It is just that, where it's just like, okay, we're both high levels of emotion right now. Like, and I need to step away because I have to process it outside of the space. I cannot be in the moment trying to work it through. And early on, we had I can't even remember. Oh, it's a funny story. I do remember what it was. Basically, it was like a year into our relationship. And he had, like, messaged me one day and said like, hey, I'm gonna go see an old friend. They're back in the US. They haven't been in the US for a while. And I was like, okay, cool. And I'm like sitting there like waiting for more information. And I was like, who are you gonna see? And he's like, oh, it's the girl from high school. You probably didn't know her. And then I was like, and at the time, this is probably pre any kind of like sexual fluidity brain. So I'm kind of like, do I need to be jealous? What is
Right.
like messing around on me? Like, what is this conversation? And he gave me very minimal details. I didn't ask for any details, but he gave me very minimal details. So then that entire day, I basically spiraled and was like,
Oh.
is he like fucking with me? And also at the time, this is a very important context. We had just seen La La Land and we both loved it and we cried and we were like, oh my God, because we're both thinking about how like they had to break up to do things, you know, their dreams that they wanted to follow. So we were like in the headspace of like, maybe that's going to be us, but I don't think it is yet. Like, so we were very like emotionally attached to La La Land when it came out. And that day he had to drive out to LA and they ended up going to like a couple of the spots where major stuff was filmed because, you know, Griffith Observatory, all these. And I'm like, I don't get to spend that time with you. Yeah. And I'm like, ugh. But then I was also simultaneously going like, he hasn't shown any indicators. He's never treated me poorly or like tried to make me feel lesser until now, if that's what's happening. So I was very much upset, but I was also trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. And what that turned out to be was just that like I didn't ask questions and he just was like, oh, she's not asking, she's fine. And I was like, no, I want to know everything. I'm a gossip, just tell me all the details. I just want to know what's going on. And like they had never dated, like there was nothing untoward that was even going to happen or had happened in the past. It was very much a moment of me just going like, I think, is this the drama that people talk about when they're in relationships?
Right.
And so
with such a good insight.
It was wild to live because then I went to my mom and dad, which you should probably never do. That's my advice when you're in a spiral, is that I went to my mom and she's like, fuck him, dump him. He's a piece of trash. And I was like, I don't think that's the truth though, Mom. Thank you though for that advice. And then she told my dad, because I wasn't going to tell my dad about what was going on because I was embarrassed. And I was like texting my friend, like trying to sort out as this is happening in real time, like how I should feel about it. And my dad comes in and he just puts a hand on my shoulder and he's like, you know, if he's doing that, that's his problem. But Avalon, it's not a big deal. Either like he is and that sucks, or and you can break up with him, or he's not and it's fine. And I was like, thanks, Dad. And at the time I was like very like put off by it, where I was like, thanks, Dad. That was so emotionally, thank you. That really makes me feel better. It felt very detached. But honestly, it's great advice.
It's great advice, yeah.
At the end of the day, if someone's being kind of a dick to you, you don't have to put up with it.
Yeah.
Especially if it's like, you know, happening far away from you. Like it's just like, okay, if you're gonna go meet somebody else, even though we have established parameters here, fine.
Yeah.
But
wow,
that, you know, we worked through that, and then part of that, you know, kind of also brought up where his like insecurities lied in relationships, which was when I would get silent about stuff and I would just kind of shut down a little bit and just be like, I can't talk about this. He assumed that I was building a case in my head about it. And I was like, that's not what's happening at all. I'm literally overwhelmed and I'm trying to not cry. That's all that's going on in my brain right now. I know that once I get the you know, physical and kind of I have to feel the feeling, get it out, then I can kind of approach this with a more like not logical and detached way, but it, you know, I don't want to overreact. I don't want to like be mean to you. I don't want to make it worse. So I need to take that space to like step away and be like, okay, like, let's look at the hard facts. Is he being mean to you? No. Is he like, do you think he's cheating on you right now with a woman? Probably not, because he's never indicated that he would do that to you before. Right. So it's being like in your own head ruminating can sometimes be good, but it's also space for anxieties.
Right. Well, there's reflection and rumination. It's a fine balance, and we don't always know what exactly we need in a certain moment. And I am like a rapid processor, but also because I was always like, I'm a rapid processor. I know exactly how I feel in the moment. I robbed myself of slowing down enough to feel the reactive feeling on my own.
Yeah.
You know, and I was just like sharing it with the person because I also had the logical parts. And so I think there's actually a huge amount of wisdom in, it seems like you really know yourself, like, or know what you need. Do you? No? I mean, I know you said you're in progress, but like.
Yeah. I think I mean, I always like every day is easier, right? Where I feel like, yes, that is the truth, that I feel like I know myself really well. But I think a lot of it, honestly, I think it just stems from trauma. All of it stems from a kind of trauma where, like, you know, I saw my parents fight and be very vocal about like what they didn't like, right? And that, like, shouting matches, what
Yeah.
I don't like that. I can't,
Yeah.
that's it's too uncomfortable, it's too triggering. But I've, like, my partner has told me about his past relationships where, like, there was never any abuse that took place, but it was very loud vocally. Like, they would be very like, here's the truth, and I'm going to tell
Mhm.
it to you kind of aggressively, and I can't do that. That's too much for me. So I think, like, to because that was so, like, probably traumatizing for a young lady, a young girl, maybe me. But the pendulum swung the other way, where it was
Right.
just like, we have to be. We're not getting to that point. I don't want
Right.
whatever that is. I don't want it, which is so
Yeah.
good and insightful, but it sucks that trauma had to kind of push me in that direction, I think.
Mm,
But
mhm, mhm.
still thankful for it. But I think that's why it's hard to kind of look back at it and be like, oh yeah, you got this, Avalon. It's like,
Yeah, that's
there's
that's
so
true. That's
much.
true. And also our greatest gifts are often our biggest pokey places. I know that for me, like it's like such a
Yes.
gift that I'm so non-judgmental, and sometimes regularly, especially with new people, I have a lot of fear because I don't always trust my discernment because my open-mindedness has led me to be taken advantage of. And I have to remind myself that I have so
Yes.
much more tools than I did a decade ago, and maybe I could go on normal dates again, like,
Yes.
or a new version, whatever that
Uh-huh.
looks like. So I
Yeah.
totally thank you for also just like sharing that. I am curious. I would love
Mhm.
to hear. Okay, so comparison is normal and human. It's the comparison with judgment, particularly negative judgment of self or other, where we get all tripped up. And I also wonder how it is to have a partner where it sounds like you've really honed a lot of things in your like mutual ongoing woo with one another. Like in that connection, it
Mhm.
sounds like you keep the connection actively alive. We're still getting details, but what is it then
Mhm.
like to try and connect with other people's like what even qualities in other people, when you have someone who you can communicate with so much, do you look for? Like, what creates sparks when other people are trying to, I guess, appeal to you? Like, what is that like?
It's been interesting because, like I said, I think around the time that we decided we were going to be non-monogamous, it was like a year or two before COVID. So that changed a lot of approaches to what we were going to do anyway, because then we're just like, well, you were self-isolating for like a year. Like, so there was really not a lot going on. So then as the world has continued, we've kind of come out of our shells a little bit, but we did definitely like hunker back down into, like, we live in our house by ourselves and we don't want to get anybody sick, so we're not going to see
Yeah.
anybody else. But we for me, it's been interesting because I found that I reverted to pre-dating Nick attitude, which is not a healthy version. When I sought out to date and I ended up dating and getting in a relationship with Nick, I was very like, I know what I'm looking for. I'm not going to put up with bullshit. This is going to be fine. With opening it up and kind of going like, you know what? I think like we're fine dating like the same sex, opposite sex, any kind of like in or between that. Because before we had, when we first started, we were like, okay, then you can only date men, and if I want to do anything, it would only be with other women. Because I was a little sensitive of like, well, why would you be searching for the same genitals as me if you have me? Which was very, not narrow minded, but it's the baby steps of understanding where your jealousy on the spectrum lies. And now we're at a great place where like there is no jealousy. It's just kind of like whoever you make a connection with, doesn't matter who they are, what their identity is, just go for it, which is great. But I have found that I still lean more towards men, which is a fun dating pool to choose from in the year in our Lord 2024. And so I was trying to be very open minded. I was trying to like not preemptively judge people. And kind of like what you were saying, that turned into really weird dates because I was a little too open and like, maybe they'll be fine. And instead you get like some really weird conversations and some really weird vibes. And maybe this isn't what dating should be like. And I feel like dating apps are so much different than they were a mere 8 years ago because the internet is such a different place. So even though like, Nick and I was such a success story, and I don't think it's because we went to the same high school. It's a funny like part of our
Right.
story, but I
Right.
don't think that really had too much to play into like being like, oh, you're not a murderer. Like,
Yeah.
it's fine. It worked out. But I I find as I have gone on other dates with people, a lot of I haven't hit that same chemistry. I haven't felt that immediate comfort with somebody else, which who knows? Maybe that's still just a little bit of like, oh, please don't stand so close to me. I don't want to share germs. I don't know if that's just the physicality of it all, or like the political climate we live in is a little bit tiresome sometimes, and so it's really hard to trust new people that you meet. But I have it kind of like what I talked about. The pendulum swung, so I went back to kind of being like, oh well, I'll just be as open-minded as I can be and see where stuff goes. And that led me to kind of dating a couple, not dating, dates, singular date with a person, with mostly men who it was very clear had no experience in kind of the sexual or relationship fluidity that I did, even though I'm still learning as well. And I don't mind teaching people, but I think I found in the handful of dates I've gone on, especially with men who, either said that they were non-monogamous or just were straight and single, that it becomes like this fetishization of like, oh, like your husband's not here. Isn't that something? And I'm like, no, that's I'm looking for a connection, but it's not because he's not here. Like, this isn't like it's like almost like it feels like a reverse unicorn moment where I'm like, I'm not looking, I don't understand what we're doing here. And so that's been kind of rough, very disheartening in some ways.
What do you think that human pattern is? Is that someone trying to like gain specialness over another person? Like, what do you like? I mean, I know some people have like secrecy kinks, but so you're like, that's literally not what's happening. This is with full permission.
Yeah, I will tell you a fun story about one of the dates I went on. It also aligns with understanding my guardrails and how I didn't understand I needed them. It's a funny story because my husband was out of town. It just so happened. And I had matched with a guy on a dating app. And immediately we were talking. He was in a non-monogamous relationship. So I was like, cool, that's already a green flag because we're probably on the same page about what we're looking for, even if it's for like a long-term thing. Like we understand something there. Yeah. And immediately we were very like, there was a little bit of flirting, but then it became very like, let's hash this out. Like, what are you looking for? And I was like, oh, well, like I'm open to some physical stuff if it happens, but like, I'm looking for genuine connection. It's the cheesy kind of what you kind of have to go through. Like, I want connection, but it can just be make out buddies. Let's see what happens if we want to be buds or not. And that I felt very comfortable. It was a very great conversation that progressed into like more flirting. And then like that kind of led to being like, we should meet up. And he's like, I'm going to be like traveling in the next couple weeks. And so like, could we meet up like ASAP essentially? And I was like, you know what? I feel pretty comfortable so far with this conversation because we've been very communicative, which is what I was really looking for in any of the messages that I was getting. It was like, can we actually talk about like boundaries and stuff? And I was like, cool. Yeah. Like my friend's in town. We can go to, because he worked at a bar. It's like, we'll show up, like we'll come to your bar at the end of the week and then we'll just see if the vibe is right, essentially. And we went there. It was a great, cool like night. We hung out and just talked to patrons. He was the only person at the bar. So like, it was conversation, nothing really. And going back to like senses and stuff, like nothing was screaming romantic to me. I was like, this is cool. We're all getting on. I'm not getting any flirty vibes. I'm just kind of, this is it, it's a night out at a bar. It's fine. And, we stay there until the bar closes. And then, and this friend of mine, we're besties, but we've also made out. So like, there's a little, like, she's like my safety net a little bit in the situation to be like, you can yank me out of a situation or just be there. So I feel safe. It's all a win. And, that turned into kind of a, how do I even want to present it? I have very mixed feelings about it. So the bar closes. He's like, hey, do you want to go to the back room to me? And I was like, no, why not? And he also invited my friend. We go into the back room and it's immediately make out central. And I was like, well, all right, like tongue in my mouth, but I'm like into it. I'm not into it, but I'm just like, this is progressing very quickly. This is not normally how I do things, but I'm very aroused. So let's just keep going with it. And it's a very quick little rendezvous. I don't really get off, but he does, and my friend does, and I'm very happy that they had an orgasm. I did not, and I like to tease her about it that I was the only one who didn't in that room. But I was like, it's a little unfair that you guys got to have fun and I got to orgasm and I didn't, but that's fine. That's whatever. And on the drive back, I'm sitting there going like, wow, that was like, it's kind of like whiplash where you're just like, I can't believe like 5 minutes ago we were making out and kind of like having oral sex in the back of a bar, which seems kind of shady. That's kind of, I didn't know I was going to do that tonight. And so with all that, no regrets, very consensual. I have no regrets about the act itself, though. The things that I learned was that I needed a lot more wooing. I needed like, give me a sensual touch on my shoulder, kind of flirt with me a little bit on the side, like build up to that makeout session. And then I also learned that like if a dick is in front of my mouth, apparently I will suck it. So we have to establish that maybe when we go out, we're not aiming to have oral sex on the first date. You know what I mean? Like
I sure do.
like
anytime I'm
know,
like just
I always,
let me see it. Don't do that. Don't do it.
Like I always joked, I'm like, I'm just a slut up here. I never would act on it. I'm way too shy. No, you're not. No, you're not. Clearly you're not. And that's okay.
That's
So
okay.
my partner was very like, I talked to him obviously through the whole process of talking to the guy and then telling him that my friend was going with me, so it was all going to be safe and stuff. And then I told him about it and he was very excited for me, but he's like, you need to set like goals for when you go on dates. You cannot just be like, well, we'll see what happens. Because like, for instance, I didn't talk to him about if he had been tested recently. I didn't know any of his sexual history other than he had a primary partner. And, you know, luckily, you know, I got tested afterwards. We're all good. He seemed like a clean dude. It's fine. But he ended up ghosting me right afterwards. So it became a very weird moment of like, like, I don't mind that we're not together, but like, I thought it was a decent time we had. And it wasn't, you know, we chatted a little bit afterwards, but then ghostage happened and then we just haven't talked since then.
Yeah.
Don't know if it was purposeful. Don't know if he, you know, life got busy. Like I'm trying to withhold too much judgment. I'm a little sassy about it because it was the first time I had tried something like that. But sometimes it just kind of goes that way. And that was a insightful kind of a bummer, but also fun moment for me because I was just like, okay, well, I need more emotionally out of the person that I want to be with because like, yeah, we can have a little fun in the back of a bar and I'm kind of into it, but I want to repeat that. I don't want to just be like, okay, now I got to go fucking find somebody else. This is exhausting to find and trust, hand over some trust to people. So I think there was like an initial question I was trying to answer.
No, you actually just set me up. I mean, we're talking about wooing and comparing it to your experiences, but you have actually just set me up for a wonderful transition into my next question, which is, you know, when do you feel the most connected to other humans and what does it take to make that connection intimate?
Oh, it's such a great question because the only other instance I have of it, other than my partner, which I think was just such a sparky chemistry, the stars aligned moment for me occasionally that I think about. But my best friend, who I've made out with and had sex with, that progressed from being a very close friendship to more simply because we were also talking about our sexual identities at the time, and she was also in a long distance open relationship. But she was more aware of her sexual wants and needs than I was at the time. I think, well, I don't want to say it. I don't know if that's the right way I want to say it, but I just mean that she knew more what she wanted out of desire and sex with other people than I did. Cause I was still like, I've only ever been with my partner. I don't really know. And that just progressed into something organically because we basically, like, the moment I was like, yeah, I think I'm bi, we're also in an open relationship. It becomes that space of like fun playfulness. And then that, like, and she's also very neurodivergent, so I think we just kind of like connected and we're like, you see me, I see you. And it was just easy to feel like I didn't have to play it suave, which I often do with men, which is a weird thing I'm trying to dissect and try not to be. Hey, movies and TV taught me that playing aloof is how you get boys. It is wrong. That's not how you get boys. And it makes you feel stupid inside.
I was like, oh, in my experience, launching myself right at them works pretty good. Depending on how you measure.
I don't know. I internalized that kind of toxic mentality of like, you know, you have to play hard to get because like if you're too forward, you're just a slut. Crazy how that's so wrong on so many levels. But with my best friend, it helps, I think, that she is like a cis woman. Like I found making female friendships far easier anyway. Just like you can kind of be intimate already just by like, I can touch people easier that way. With men, I'm a little bit more like, I don't want to lead people on. There's a lot to unravel in our society. Don't want to lead people on. Don't want to make people think that I'm trying to do something to them if I'm not. And since we both like came out to each other very quickly, and then she was a more touchy-feely person than I am, like there was a lot of like soft boundaries being crossed for a
Mm.
while. And it wasn't necessarily like we sat down and said like, what if we had sex? It was literally just an organic moment of
Yeah.
like, you know, a touch kind of goes a little farther and you're like, well, I guess we'll just keep seeing where this goes. And
Yeah.
then like, you know, kind of checking in. But it was with Nick, he was very vocal in his wooing of me. It was like, can I touch you here? Are you
Yeah.
okay? Like very vocal check-in. With her, it was way more touch and just eye contact. Like, is this okay? Like in your brain.
In your
And
brain.
I trusted her to like stop if something was wrong. But we were that was like, it felt very organic. And like, we only had sex the one time. We haven't had it again, but we're still friends, very close friends.
Mm.
Historians will say. but I think after having that experience with her and like us continuing to be such close, like, you know, so close to one another and in the years past, like, I think I see that and I'm just like, okay, it's similar to how I feel like I approach Nick, where it's just like, do I like you as a person? We don't
Yeah.
have to be soulmates, but like, do I like you? Does the things you talk about? Because like, you know, if somebody's like going on a tangent about something they're really enthusiastically like into, I don't care if it's a board game. I don't care if it's a video game. You tell me what you're into, and I'm like, you've got me. You've got my
Yes.
attention.
Yes. I love hearing what other people are excited about, even if it's not sex. Yes, I totally get that.
Yeah. And that's like, I think enthusiasm about life and like, I found, you know, again, tying it back to like, I had so much, I think, based off of like, you know, books and movie and TV that I thought romance would be like.
Yeah.
When I have had it happen in my life, it's way more casual and platonic at first for me, where it's just like, oh, are you just like a really interesting human being? And then like, let's dabble in some flirting. Let's see what happens if I put some feelers out there. And if it's like return, then I'm just like, great. Like versus, you know, I think like a lot of the dates I've been on, for instance, like a dating app is great because you know someone is attracted to you probably because they've liked your photo,
Sure.
liked your profile. And that's a great barrier to entry to be like, okay, you like me and you probably want to make out with me. That's a good place to be. But it also like, you know, that's also its like con for me, because then I'll go on a date and it's like clear that they're into me, but they're not trying to make conversation. I'm just like, well, I don't really know what to do with this, because then how do we have any kind of foreplay here? Like,
I'm just like, I see that you're attracted to me, but do you want to know me at all? Like, is there actual, you know?
How can we play if I can't talk to you?
Yes. Yeah.
Like how, like it's, and then like to me, like I thought that was a really big trust thing for a while. I'm like, maybe I'm just a really distrusting person. I'm like, no, I think that it's important to have a baseline of communication. And that's like some insight I've also learned from my partner and what he's told me about his dating like woes or successes throughout the years, where it's just like, you know, he can have more physical sex without having a deep emotional connection. But he's like, but if we can talk about like, yeah, I don't care if we're talking about anime for the first 15 minutes, we can do that and then make out, and I don't even give a crap. It's just finding the comfort level. And I think that's something I'm trying to internalize and try to bring forth on when I continue to talk to people. But you know, dating online is still very hard. I think people like want to chat, but it's hard to find that human connection that way.
It is, and this is a brand new frontier for all of us. And then everyone likes to pretend like there's norms, but there are not, you know. And honestly, what I think I'm observing in my own human experience is everyone has different comfort levels around communication. And oftentimes the people that are like, no, talking about it's not sexy, we can't do it. There's some capital or lowercase t trauma around talking about sex. And I'm talking about this as a person that had a lot of bad experiences when I tried to get the verbal clarity that I needed to feel safe and connected. You know, and I really want to highlight the paradigm you delivered to us of the clear, explicit verbal communication you had with Nick, and then the like implicit explorations that you had with your best friend. And my first therapist explained this concept to me, the difference between boundary pushing and the mutual, often implicit agreement to move an implicit boundary, to shift a connection, you know, which is very different from just crossing a boundary, whether that's explicit or implicit, you know. And so this wandering statement is to say, like, first of all, applauding you jumping into online dating because it's a scary place sometimes, and also in this absence of norms, there is also it's not really how humans are built. Like the dopamine hit that we get from like seeing a photo and getting a like is kind of actually setting up our little animal systems to fail. It's very different from like
Yeah.
sniffing someone, even if you're doing it subconsciously in the wild, whatever,
Yeah.
even if that's a grocery
Yeah.
store, and then being like,
Mhm.
animal body says spark, and then going forth and
Yes.
discovering the words or the dancing or the singing or the connection that would, get us to the like
Yes.
other parts. And so in your perfect imagination, if a brand new to you person was going to woo you effectively, what elements do you imagine would be in place for it to feel really good? I'm hearing connection, I'm hearing conversation, but like just be as big and grand as your imagination can go here.
Well, like, I'm a bit of a brat. So I think my my attitude towards most people is like I am shy, but I'm also like, please just take control. That's all I really
Mm.
want in the situation. So I think when I meet people in the wild who seem like I don't want to implicitly say dominant because it's not necessarily that, but there's a little bit of the confidence, there's a little bit of the like, and I think again tying it back to my best friend, I think that's why that worked is that she pushed the boundary a little bit to be like, hey, what if?
Yeah.
And I like that push and pull because
Yeah.
to me it feels safe where it's just like if you're pushing a little bit but allowing me to kind of retreat, then that's the greatest spot it can be in. So like
Yeah.
it's so cheesy, but confidence and just a little bit of just like it's not suave. It's just kind of like if you know what you want, then I can work with that. Perhaps to my detriment, but also to just say like, oh no, I don't want that. So like if
Yeah.
you're, I feel like people, or at least in my experience, like I have not met a lot of people who are confident in the right way. It's more of like a give me versus like
Mhm.
what like I want this, but it's okay if you don't. I feel like the kind of energy I've gotten is very much I want this, and if you don't,
Yeah.
it's more threatening than it is
Mm.
playful, and I want the playfulness.
That's such a great observation. I too love playfulness. And as you were talking, I just got this image of like dancing, like the types of dance where there's steps and someone leads,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I do
Mm-hmm.
want someone who wants to lead a little bit, at least if I'm in my personal life. I am in a
Yeah.
situation where for work, I'm always leading, I'm always holding space, I'm always
Right.
in charge, whether that's as a writer or photographer or someone who's like working in a creative session or a sex worker, like I'm holding space
Mm-hmm.
to serve. And that does make me very
Yes.
happy. And that means that in my private life, when I'm looking to relax, I'm like, okay, well, first of all, did you study the dance enough to know the steps? Second of all,
Yes.
am I going to have to be a teacher in my off time or like when I'm just trying to play
Yes.
with you? Or are you someone where you can lead me? And that's not to say we won't switch in the dance. Now I'm destroying the dancing metaphor because that's not
Yeah.
what really happens. But I'm like, can you lead enough? Like, can you throw the ball back and forth? Like, can we play?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. No, totally. Because I think like kind of what I said at the beginning about like people pleasing, like it's very internalized and I try my best to not default into that mode with the people that I'm around. But I think that's like, there's a bit of me that's always like I can, let me see what you need from me and I can play with that. But I think the best relationships I have in my life are people who push back on that a little bit to be like, no, what are you feeling right now? Like, tell me, are you
Mm.
good? And as much as like that might make me uncomfortable sometimes, it's good because it means that they're aware that maybe I'm not totally, I don't want to say consenting because I think that makes it sound a little bit darker and a little bit like
Yeah,
more
yeah.
threatening, but just kind of like, it's a check in to be like, are you present? Are you
They're
here? And,
tracking you. Yeah.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's I found especially as I gotten older and have had made such great connections to people who check in with me like that. I'm like, oh God, I've been missing this all of my life. Thank you
Yes.
for like you need me and that you love me and you want me to be a part of your life, whether that's platonically or otherwise. But you're not going to take advantage of that like
Yeah.
that you need me, which is what I very much am like, oh, if someone needs me too much, I'm out.
Oh, I
I don't
totally
want
get
anything to
that.
do with
I'm like, freedom. I don't know. I must have my freedom. Also, what a
Yes.
beautiful observation because it really is like that mirroring is so important for us humans to feel
Mhm.
witnessed and connected and okay. Like, that's what happens with like us when we are little babies trying to understand the world. Like, if our parents do
Yeah.
not emotionally mirror our feelings, or if they're shut down or dismissed or whatever, then we're like, oh, fuck, I must be crazy. This thing is this,
Yeah.
I must be
Yeah.
crazy in here. You know, and so many
I'm
of us have
broken.
had that experience. Yeah. Yeah. There's something wrong with me
Yeah.
because this doesn't seem okay. And they're pretending like it's okay, which is why whenever parents are like, I don't want my child to see that I'm upset, I'm like, they can feel it. What if we introduced the idea of talking about
Yeah.
emotions so that they can learn how to healthily process a big feeling when it comes up?
Yeah.
Because that's, you know,
Well, see, my parents were very much like, you know, they would see me get overwhelmed and be like, "It's fine, Avalon. Just stop. It's
yeah,
fine."
that
So
is
it
the
was very much
dismissive
stopping
parenting
the
stuff. Yeah, I got a lot of
Yeah,
like,
and
you're
it's
okay, you know, and it's like I was
yeah,
okay,
yes.
but it's like, but I was
Well,
having a big feeling, and I needed to know that it's normal. That if I hurt myself, like, yes, I'm physically okay, but also like, is someone gonna comfort
yeah.
me, mom? You know, and like,
Yeah. Well, and
yes,
it's
but
so like for me that was the thing I had to learn was that you have to feel the feeling because for me I was like, "Oh, I need to stop." So then
yep,
like the regulation stops and you're like,
yes,
"Well, you're
yeah.
still putting it somewhere back there. It's going to come up
Exactly.
again."
It's gonna
So,
boil over if you don't
ugh,
process it. Okay, normally I wait to get
exactly.
into these details, but you brought it up first. So I'd love to hear about your brat self.
Well, it's a thing I've learned about myself in the last like probably year or two,
Okay.
having loved that we had a brat girl summer because that was just like I'll dive even more into this
Wait,
feeling.
did we?
But
I missed it. I don't understand bratting and I've been
oh,
trying to study it. Oh, I missed the brat girl summer. Okay.
mostly I mean brat girl summer because Charlie XCX had that amazing album and it was called Brat. So I was just like,
Oh, yes, I see
yes,
what
I
you're
will
saying.
embody this vibe. But honestly, a lot of my education is coming from a lot of it came from podcasts back in the day. But a lot of it now is like a lot of like smut nowadays is healthier than it was when I was a kid. So you have these dynamics playing out which introduce terms, and so then I just kind of dive into them from there. But um I it's one of those things where like in outside of a sexual context, so right now with you, I'm like, I love being a rat. This is so fun. If I was like flirting with someone, I'd be like, don't even talk to me about it. It's too embarrassing. I can't believe this is like a thing
Really?
that I
Wait, really?
yeah,
Okay, because I
yes.
theoretically like understand many concepts, but like I am such a good girl and like I understand binaries
Oh,
and non-binaries. Like I can hold two
mm-hmm.
pieces that are true and opposite at the same time. However, I have been trying to perform brat for one of my lovers who like calls me a brat and we technically and I'm like, I don't know, I'm really not. Like I'm really just not. Like I try to figure out how to be naughty and and also I've had some times where I was like, oh, I'm going to go full brat and I accidentally destroyed the
Yeah.
person, you know, because they asked me
Oh
to, you know, I had a partner that was like, be mean to me and I made a very playful joke, but I didn't realize that it would like hit the core of his
yeah.
greatest fears, and it was a
Oh
good tease,
no.
but it like it caused him to storm out of my house, and we didn't speak for a year and a half until he apologized. You know, so I've had these, so I do
Yeah.
not feel safe
Oh
being a
no.
brat, like, you know, but I'm just like, what's how does it work for you?
So for me, how it's manifested now that I'm kind of aware is that I because it's one of those things where I'm like I've always kind of been this way, but then
Mm.
I now understand kind of the script, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah.
And for me, it's basically I want, and I don't know if it's a specific thing between me and my partner either. Again, I don't have greater context quite yet, but with at least with me and my partner, I like to be playfully flirty, but kind of mean like, oh, you want me, you can't have me, kind of
Mhm.
idea. Like if you want it so bad, then fucking do something about it. Is kind of the idea, but
Yeah.
it's not the same as trying to like dominate him. It's more just like I want to rile you up so bad that you will be overcome with passion and then I am taken care of and I don't have to do it a goddamn thing.
I
Like
love that
it's very
description.
yeah. And I think like if we're going to get like therapeutic about it, I guess, or like analytical, I think like it really comes from like it's very hard for me to give up control. So in order to
Ah.
do so, I have to feel like I have no other choice. So if I have no other
Ooh.
choice, it's like it feels passionate, it feels like in the moment, but it's a script at the end of the day if
Okay.
I'm just like teasing. I'm
Yeah.
not aware of the script most times. I'm
Right.
just kind of being myself. But I think that's what I find like alluring about it, because I don't really want to be dominated, but at the same time, I love the energy of being like, no, I know what's good for you. You're going to take it because you're good. And here you go. And it's also embarrassing because it's just like, I didn't think I had this these wants inside of me in that kind of way. But it's an interesting place, because I think for me, I like being in the brat space, but I think it's the same thing of like, I don't want people to take advantage of knowing that they could easily rile me up in that way. And so it's hard to give up control. It's fun, but it's hard.
Do you feel like you need to be with someone who can really handle your brat parts maybe and take care of you?
It's funny because actually me and my best friend were talking about this because we, in the few encounters we've had where we've had physical intimacy, we are not very syncopated kissers. It does not go well. Like, it's not bad, but it's not good. And we're like, why is it that? And like, we don't practice or anything.
I was going to say,
like,
sometimes
all
it
of
takes
these moments
practice.
we've had together have very been yes. But we were talking about it, and then I was telling her about how like, oh, you know what, I'm just a brat. And she's like, oh my God, that makes so much more sense, because I tried to let you lead and you don't fucking do anything.
Oh, wow. So you're like, take control, be in charge. I saw you initiate. Go on.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah. Well, and here's like, here's a funny thing, I think, or like funny part of the story about the bar that I think you might find interesting and funny now that we're talking about this, is there was a moment where he was getting ready to come and he was asking, he told me to get on my knees, and I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And it was very much like it was both a, like, I don't know that I know you well enough to give up this amount of control. And I don't know if I want to do it. And on top of that, like, fuck you, no. It was very bratty. It's like, I'm not going to do what you tell me. And not that I wanted him to push back on that, but it was also a test to see what he was going to do with that.
Yeah.
Like, basically. And then he's like, okay, well then, like, where do you want it? And it was like, and then I was like, I don't know. And I was being very, like, not aloof, but just, again, bratty of like, I don't know, you tell me where you think.
Yeah.
And then that turned into just like him kind of like, in a way that was arousing, kind of like, you know, cornering me to be like, well, where do you want it? Like, I need you to say it. And then I was like, okay, well, there then, I guess. But also like, so a little bit of submission, but it was very, I think it's just like, I'm not my own therapist, but if I had to guess, I feel like it is the push and play of like giving up some control, but being able to take it back if I don't want what's happening to be happening. But like, that was that was the first time I had a sexual encounter where I was very aware that I'm like, I can't stop being a brat right now. And we're just going to see how this is going to play out. And if this is coming across as like, I don't know. It's like I don't know what the right words would be. Like, if it's coming across as like abrasive, or is like a hard no consensually, or if he's going to take it and play with it. And luckily he just ran with it, but was very much just like, I'm not going to do anything to you that you don't want. But
I mean, it sounds like you challenged him. Like, you were like, challenge. And he's like, all right, challenge accepted. Like, you got the game on the wave. Like, I think because my greatest insecurity is misreading the wavelength and causing harm, which has happened once or many times. You know, I'm not a brat, because every time I've tried, it's like, if the game is like, we have a rubber band around our hands and we're going back and forth, and it's kind of like a little bit of chase. When it's my turn to go back, I'm like, snap, oh shit, I broke the rubber band. Like, I didn't mean to break the game. I was just trying to play, and I don't always realize how strong I am or how fragile the ego of the other person is, because I don't my buttons push in different methods, you know?
Yeah.
So I would actually love to hear how you learned about sex. You know, we heard that you've listened to podcasts. I would love to hear if you have any specific favorite podcasts you learned from, but like, you know, include what messages did you get growing up? Did you get a sex ed talk? Did you talk about it with friends? And then take us through any experience. I mean, you've given us the relational background of your experiences, but would love to hear the formative things that have contributed to your sexual learnings.
Yeah. Well, you know, I had the typical, you learn about like what your body is doing when you're in like 6th grade, but like I didn't internalize any of that information. I understood I had ovaries and that they were going to bleed, but not so much about any of the sex stuff. And then as I got older in like middle school, high school, I think a lot of, because I grew up, like I was in middle school in like 2007. So a little bit before, I think MySpace was just a thing then. I don't like, it was, there was not a lot of interneting for me quite yet. So there was a lot of reading books that I didn't understand were going to be smutty because the cover looked so colorful and fun. And then you read it and you're like, what did I just read?
I'm like, please tell me the books.
I wish I could remember them. I kind of feel like it's one of those things where I'm like, if I ever see the cover of it, I'm going to be like, enshrined to you. Thank you for introducing me to things.
Yeah.
And then when the internet kind of was becoming a thing, I was very much into reading fan fiction. So that opened up bizarro doors of like sexual proclivities that you don't normally read in published works. And that was interesting, but I didn't dive too deep. It was always kind of like a just surface level, like I know that I want to hear about a man kissing a woman, or like maybe they're gonna have sex. It was never queer. It was never like, I wish I could remember the first time like something queer really popped into my world. I'm sure it was the internet, because I don't know where else I would have seen it at the time. But I know that once I discovered that like women could kiss each other, I was like, tell me more. Women can do this? Why aren't we all just doing this all the time then? Why are the men around?
Dude, my number one question
Avalon
growing up. Yeah. I'm like, why aren't we all fucking and kissing all the time?
And it's funny only because then like I go the next 10 years being like compet and not even questioning my sexual identity at all, even though I'm like, everybody wants to make out with everybody all the time, right? Why is gender even so
wait, can I what is compet? Are you saying comp het?
Comp het, yeah, it's a compulsive heterosexuality.
Compulsive. So, ooh, this is a new to me term. Thank you for teaching it. I heard you say it earlier, and I was like, I know the second part is het, but just the default mode network.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's like a whole doc, and I don't agree with everything that it is. I think it was just somebody who is compiling a lot of experiences of people.
Me too.
And they were coming at it. As the way that I learned about it, it was coming out of like, all women are probably just compulsorily attracted to men and you're not actually attracted to men. And I was like, I don't know about that, because I feel pretty attracted to any gender, but I understand what the major kind of insight is, which is like you're societally like shown that these are the relationships you can have, and then you're not questioning or like trying to explore any other part of yourself until it's presented to you, like maybe too late, depending on the kind of situation you're in. So internet was very helpful. Once back in the day, YouTube did not have censors, so there's a lot of ladies making out on YouTube. That's all I have to say.
Oh my god,
that's how I found
YouTube has gotten
a lot of things
so censored in the last couple of years. Sex stories, I don't know if the sex stories channel, like we haven't even been uploading stuff because it's like we've almost gotten it taken away so many times, and I'm just like, we're just talking about it, and literally the guidelines say that if you're talking about it for educational purposes, which we are here, like it is literally to learn from each other. I don't know, dude. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's rough, because I learned, I wish I could remember the podcast name. I want to say the host's name was Sandra Oh. It used to be on the Nerdist podcast network back in the day.
Wait, Sex Nerd Sandra?
That's what it was called.
She was the first sex educator I ever saw. I was being a photographer at an event in Los Angeles, and she was speaking, and I remember what she taught. She taught just a basic arousal, which was like cupped hand, just put it over the pussy, don't even do anything, and just see what happens. And I was like, I love that. How did she know that I like that? And then I learned she was a sex educator, and I was like, what? You're what? A what? And that was not that long ago. I mean, it was maybe a decade ago.
Her podcast?
Like, yeah.
Oh my God. Her podcast was so insightful when I was in my like late teens, early 20s, because it was such a safe, fun, she was very playful in the way that she described stuff, but it's similar to the vibes I'm getting with this podcast, where it's just like, let's talk about the nitty gritty, but also like, oh, this is so fun. Let's nerd out about it. Yeah. And so that was really insightful, because it was talking about sex in a way that I felt comfortable, because as much as I would love to be a very sexy individual, I don't feel like a very sexy individual. I'm a nerdy, like shy, playful, but like sexy isn't something that which, that's some self-work we got to work on. I don't feel like a very sexy individual.
Sure.
So like to be like deep voice, let's talk about like, how alluring, blah, 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 like just kind
Oh
of
my
the Marilyn
God.
Monroe, I think, of it all. Like, I
Oh,
never resonated with that.
same. And then
So it was
people look
hard
at me and they think I'm going to be that. And I'm like, I'm silly. Do you love my silliness? And they're like, ah. And I'm like, hey, come on, let me have your dick.
like these two things can't coexist. Sex
Can I
can't
lick
be
your
fun
nipple?
or funny.
Yeah. But now actually I know how to introduce it in a way that does not scare them. And, but I totally resonate with you on that. Like, that sexy trope isn't, it's not for a lot of people. It's not for, and that pressure that it creates is not sexy for our society in many ways,
No.
And when I feel
Oh my
permission to be
God.
my silly self, then I might drop into those husky tones and surprise myself. And then sometimes I'll notice it and I'll be like, ah! So,
I know, same. All of a sudden you're like, who is she in the mirror? I don't know who she is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think like that podcast helped so much because it was such a private way to learn too, where it's just like no one's gonna walk in and look at my computer and know that I'm learning about these things. And then like as I've gotten older, a lot of it's just talking to my friends, but most of my friends are not queer. So it's a very interesting dynamic to talk about them and their relationships, because there's a lot of like, you need to unpack some weird stuff that's going on in those dynamics.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm just like, we're open and we're fine and we're not yelling at each other. So a lot of it's now just been, I think, just reading podcasts. Honestly, I can't stop saying it. Podcasts were the reason I think I learned about a lot of like, I don't want to say normal, but just comfortable ways of talking about sex and education, but also it being like arousing and like, what can be arousing. And then like, I think at some point when I was in my early 20s too, I stumbled on like Gone Wild audio on Reddit. And I was like, there's audio porn, so I don't even have to watch the weird angles they put on people. Thank God. As much as I'm a visual person, I mean, that's exactly the point. I'm such a visual person that like an up close shot of someone's hole is not really gonna make me feel like I'm present in the moment. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah. Well, and my background's in filmmaking, and the type of narrative, there'll be some documentary because I can't help myself, obviously, but the type of narrative, edge-erotic stuff that I want to make, what is missing for me from most porn is that they're showing the actions, but the art of filmmaking is telling a story through a moving image. So what I really want to create is something where I have a negotiation conversation with a person. What do we want to do? Like, what are our targets? What are our goals? How can we let go of expectations, but also set some? Then we do it, and we just have a security camera style watching us, someone who's comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Then we recap what parts felt the best. Like, what were the parts that like made us go, woo? And then as a filmmaker, I would like to hire performers, turn that into a porn, like a narrative porn that encapsulates the feelings. Because don't get me wrong, I do love up close images of holes, but without the context of that person. Like I need the images that are being displayed to me to have the emotional resonance of the storytelling, so that I can have the feeling, so that I can enjoy the visual arousal. Otherwise I don't.
That is,
yeah.
That's such a good way of putting it, because I think
behind the scenes of it, of the whole, so people can see the process and see how the for lack of a better term, the sausage is made. Yeah. So that's for me. I totally feel
I
you
love that.
Yeah.
Because like I think because I never watched a lot of porn to get off when I was growing up at all.
Same.
I think it's been something I've tried to introduce as I got older, because I'm like, it's available. Maybe it's just something I haven't realized I'm into. And the only like visual porn that I've found that I've liked is I don't even know if I would call them amateur, because at this point there's just so many people who are doing great work that are like not amateurs, but they have a more not low budget, I don't know what the right word is, just kind of like it doesn't feel as studio,
They do call that category amateur if like we're making it ourselves. Like even if they are a tiny independent production company, like unless it's the mainstream porn, it is considered amateur per my understandings. But
it makes sense to me.
Yeah. I totally hear that.
there's a lot of sensual stuff out there, I think, which is where I more lean. Like, I love seeing, it doesn't have to be like shot like artistically. It doesn't need to be an A24 film, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
like you said, I'm all about context clues as I've
Yeah.
learned in my real life dating, where I'm just like, give me those transitions, give me those like feelings of like, oh, this is progressing. Like, it doesn't have, hey, the plot does not need to make sense. It just has to have transitions. It just needs to
Really?
like
I
it
will
can be
get
silly. Like,
full caught up. Oh, if it's a silly scenario, I can totally get it. I'll get stuck in producer
yeah.
brain or in like confused story mode if I'm like, I do not understand. But yeah, I totally hear that.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
think it's also stems from reading fanfic when I was a kid, because there was so
Yeah.
much like one shots, quick little stories where like you got some of the backstory, but it's just like all you need to know is that they shouldn't be fucking. And you're like, great, that's all I gotta
Mm.
know. Like, it's a forbidden something, but it doesn't really matter why it's forbidden. But
I love that.
uh,
I love that. It sounds like you talk about sex with your friends. When did that start for
mhm.
you?
It mostly started when my friends found out that me and my partner didn't have a traditional relationship. Because then
Okay.
everybody's like, tell me more. And I'm like, okay, it's not that interesting, I don't think. But between that and also, I think I was in therapy the same time that all of our like kind of relationship milestones were happening. And my therapist happened to also have been in open relationships. So
Mm.
like it was a beautiful
Yeah.
moment of like, then you understand.
What good
Let's
fortune.
talk more about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. She's the best. I've never left her. She's so good. But she talking to her about it, like I think helped me process it logically. So it was also like not in a sexy context. So I didn't feel like it was like a, nobody's getting off to me talking about it, which is great, because sometimes, or at least for me, I always felt like even when I was learning about my sexuality, I'm like, oh, this is like, it feels too fetishy. Like I don't want someone to like see me and
Mm.
assume that I want to make out with everybody. Like there's a lot of like insecurity in
Yeah.
that, at least
Yeah.
for me there was.
Oh, I hear that.
And
I didn't have
then
awareness. I wish I had. It literally was this past summer, like 6 months ago, 5.5 years into this podcast, that I was like, oh my God, people are getting off. They're jerking off listening to this podcast. What? What? And then I like,
well, oh my
so I
God,
hear that.
it's funny you say that too, because when I was doing my bachelor's in art, I finished, like I think it's been like 2 years now, my work, because I was one of the, because like I'm what, 32, I've already forgotten my own age, but
Yes.
so I was older, I was in the older group of like my cohorts in terms of going to a public university.
Uh-huh.
And so a lot of my classmates were like in their early 20s, mid 20s, but my work focused on like self-portraiture but through nudity. So there was a lot of my body up there, and I was trying to do work that showcased me and my partner, but like in a as queer of a lens as I could do it, to be like, we're both cis. We look
Ooh.
so normative, and like we look like traditional. Like if you saw us walking down the street, you're like, cool, two white people who got married, they're probably gonna have kids. And you're like, if only you knew. But without being like, like, yeah, we have sex. Like
Yeah.
it was a very fine line that I was trying to do. So being in that space and having to like discuss my work and the intent behind it was really fascinating, because none of my fellow students were judgmental. None of them,
Right.
I mean, if anything, they're probably all more a little bit educated in the queer identity of it all,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
they luckily got to live with more of that vocabulary out there.
Well, depends on
But
where they're from and what their exposure is.
that's
But
very
yeah, in
true.
general, Gen Z is like, why are you so hung up on it?
Yeah, but it was very fascinating to see people's feedback about that, because like again, like it is the thing of like, I don't want to wear like a hello I'm bi sign all the time,
Yeah.
or like I'm, and we're in a marriage but we're not,
Yeah.
monogamous. But
Yeah.
like it, having to put it on display and then talk to people about it was really fun, because people just had so much questions about it, and I was like, it's
Yeah.
not that hard, guys. Well, let me tell you. Like, just communicate. It's crazy.
Dude,
If that's what you want to
that's
do.
the number one thing. Number one thing. I get all these complicated questions. I'm like, well, have you talked to your partner? Or even questions from friends, and like, kind of like you were saying, friends who are in
Hmm.
normative marriages. Some of them, I have a lot that do
Yeah.
talk, but I have a lot that don't talk. And I'm like,
Yeah.
is that fun for you guys?
I
And it's
yeah.
all kinds of reasons. But okay, so
Different, it's
yeah.
oh, I was just gonna say, like, it's one of the things I see, and like, not to admonish or put anybody on blast that I know, but it is the thing that I see in a lot of hetero relationships that makes me sad, is just that like
Yeah.
the expectations are so different. There's a lot of like, to me, like I think even in a traditional monogamous, like hetero relationship, like jealousy is normal, but to expect your partner to never look at another person or like expect them to like not find attraction in other people is insane to me. I think that is
Yeah.
an expectation that will lead to heavy problems, whether it's internal the entire time or if it presents itself externally. Like
Yeah.
like having my partner come to me and tell me that like he couldn't see a reality in the future where he wouldn't cheat on me was a very interesting conversation, but it didn't mean he didn't love me. It was just like, I want to do this and I don't want to do it secretively and I don't want to do it if it hurts you. So then what does that leave for us? And I think that's so important because
Yeah.
like it's everybody is attracted to multiple things.
Yes.
As hard as you
Yes.
may try to not admit it, you're going to be
That's-
attracted to one more person in your life. Like there's ugh.
It is so wild to me that you are mentioning this in such this specific way, because I notice that the universe seems to bring me like themes of the week. And this is something that from multiple angles, this is now the 5th time that it's coming up for me since Sunday. And today is a Tuesday. Like,
my
you know, from
God.
different
Oh my
sources. Like, it
God.
was a chapter I read in a book. It was a sex therapist I talked to. Like, it was another friend talking to me. And then it was a client that I spoke with, you know, and now you. And it's so
Yeah.
interesting because oh, and I had like a spiritual reading, and she was like, they're telling me something about your work has to do with hypocrisy and jealousy and hypocrisy. And I was like, that is coming up a lot this week. So I don't experience jealousy yet. I mean, I get there's always room for it, but like I have such a strong sense of I am me, but we are one. And I'm also so sensitive because I'm like, if I don't want you to look at her, first of all, how can I check her out? And second of all, like,
Yeah.
then I'm supposed to think that I'm the best person in the world, or like it's this weird like competition narrative that just is not how like, it makes me wildly uncomfortable, and also it makes my heart go out to people because, like, you know, also my origin story romantically, I was the other woman accidentally at, you know, in my origins.
Yeah.
You know, and so I also am like, oh no, of course you'd like her better than me. You know, that's part of my but I also am like,
oh,
our whole world opens up when it's not a conversation about me versus that person, and also what happens when we do talk to each other about real needs. So anyway, I'm just so fascinated that you brought up this concept. Do you experience jealousy, or you mentioned earlier that you like might, and like maybe that would be fine if you did?
I liked hearing you talk about it because I don't know if I do. Like I've never felt sexual like envy for like my partner seeing someone else or anything like that. There's never been any jealousy there. Like that first time I told you that where we kind of fought, where I was like, are you seeing somebody else? I don't even know if that was jealousy. It was more just like, we're not on the same page and I don't know what to do about it. Is this is this meaningfully hurtful, or is this just miscommunication?
Right.
So I think that's been the most fascinating thing. And even my partner is very amused by it because he doesn't appear to, like, as far as he's communicated to me, does not feel any kind of jealousy, no matter what we've done. And for me, every time he's like confided in me about who he's like slept with, what happened, and it takes like, he's a little bit more reserved because of a lot of internal homophobia growing up. So it's very hard for him to like come out and say like the things that he's into. Like listening to him tell me stuff, I'm always just like, I'm so excited for you. This is so cool. Like you get to do these things. I'm kind of sad I'm not there just because I want to witness it, but like I'm not mad that I'm not a part of it.
Wait, is that
But
on the
it's
table
also,
though? Literally, I would be like just the
it
creeper
is.
partner, and I'd be like, I just want to
Like-
watch you guys fraught up close, and can I take pictures?
Yeah, I've never seen it in person before. I'd love to figure out how it works. But it's funny though, because now that I'm saying that, what's also interesting, and maybe this is part of the brat personality, I have no idea, but one of the things I learned when I brought my bestie to that bar hookup situation was at the moment that I was not the main center of attention, I was like, I'm over this. I don't want any part of this. This is not fun for me anymore. So then I was like, oh, interesting. Why do we feel that way? Why is that? And I still haven't totally unpackaged that one. But I think it's interesting that that's where the jealousy comes in, where it's like, no, I'm a part of this. But like at the same time, or at least maybe it's just different jealousy with different people. Don't know.
And is that even jealousy, or did a need not get met? Because for me, I have certainly been in experiences where a need didn't get met, but it's not because I'm jealous of what that other person got. It's because the person that I was relying on didn't fulfill a commitment and did a different thing instead. So it's not jealousy, but like it is fucked up, you know, like, and it had to do with a
Yeah.
triangulation. But I'm like,
Yes.
that's mean for no reason, you know. And what I'm
Yeah.
really clear on is that I'm a unique person. Well, in so much as we are all one, but like I have my own little ego identity kind of I'm developing,
Mhm.
and the people that I engage with also have that. And so the connection that I create with each human being like is unique and special. So I never feel that that's in
Mhm.
competition. I also have a
Mhm.
degradation kink, so if I'm not the specialist, like that's par for the course. You know, I'm like,
You're like,
yeah,
"Ooh."
should be at the bottom.
Thank
Okay,
you.
could you please both step on me before you go? But that's also like I like that. Like I'm like, please, both of you lay on me, squish me. You know, like that makes me feel cozy. And so,
Mhm.
you know, I've noticed that,
Mhm.
you know, how often in romance do we even focus on what the connection actually is? So no wonder that people aren't feeling uniquely
Mhm.
special in their connection, even though it is, you know, and even with a couple, like the connection I
Yeah.
have with one partner is different from the connection that I have with the other partner is
Yes.
different from the connection I have with the two of them together, you know? So I don't
Yes.
know. I'm
No.
still understanding it.
I totally I totally like resonate with that because for instance my best friend like the first time that we were sexual my partner Nick was in the room but they did not touch like they literally did not touch during the event so like he was doing stuff to me she was doing stuff to me and it was
Ooh.
great but then I was just like is this not a like are
Ooh.
we not okay like why are we only focused on me and then I was like I don't know if I want people focused on me but
Oh,
like they have a
really?
fine relationship
Yeah.
yeah they have a fine relationship they're like very friendly. We all hang out and stuff like that. But like they have no interest in bridging. Like Nick's
Okay.
always like, it's on the table. But if she's not going to
Yeah.
initiate, I
Yeah.
respect that and I'm not going to do anything about it.
Yeah.
But he's also able to separate, I think, more of the physical versus emotional. So like
Hmm.
there's a little bit of like everything's always on the table as long as we talk about it.
That's
Whereas
fine.
I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I need a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
bit more. But
Yeah. Good.
I've found that really interesting. But honestly, like I don't think I don't think I have that kind of jealousy bone in me because or like I've been very good about not making it weird because I've had instances when I was in high school where like you know guy friends of mine came on to me when they had a girlfriend and I was like well that seems a little sus but I was also like hey we're not gonna do that appreciate that
Good
you're
for
interested
you.
in me I guess but then I was just like but we can still be buds it's fine because nothing happened you expressed a
Mm.
want but nothing has been acted upon so I can separate that out however like as an adult I do wonder if maybe like actually it's like no that's sketchy I'm going to
Yeah.
tell your girlfriend that you did that which I
Dude.
didn't do because I was like well this is fine because nothing happened you know
Right.
you live and learn
Well,
you're a baby at like
I mean,
16
also just like for me, I'm like, well, I'm all messy when it comes to those relationship dynamics. I think people should always stick to their
yeah
commitments, but I think the commitments we
yes
are normalized into, ooh, comp, like we're compelled into
yes
commitments where they don't
yes
make sense, like monogamous commitments that
yeah
most people don't want. However, most people I've talked to do not have a protocol for creating a feeling of safety that monogamy then
mm-hmm.
seems to become a default for
It's so
unconsciously.
strange to
And so
me
they feel more
yeah
comfortable sneaking around behind each other's backs or just living without any sex. And then they're faithful,
yeah
and that is somehow romantic. And I'm like, till death do us part with no sex is true love?
I know
And you
oh my
both wanna fuck? What? Okay,
yeah
but
no
not each other. But you couldn't
well
possibly. Okay, I don't know if I would like to stay single. Thank you.
it's
Okay.
It's so fascinating because, like, I think that was a lot of the self work I ended up having to do when at first, when we opened up our relationship, and I was just like, well, let's just keep it like you know, if you want to be with guys, that's cool, but I don't know how I feel about women. And then I had to be like, well, why do I feel that way about women? Because I don't think, like, in my head, it was specifically women. I was like, I don't mind trans people. You can do whatever you. And I was like, well, then why? Why women? What is it that, like, am I? Like, clearly it's a reflection on how I feel. And then like my partner was fine with any parameter as long as he was able to have sex with penis havers.
Mhm.
But was a moment of just kind of going like, okay, well let's dissect this. Am I actually jealous? Would I be upset? And then like what is it that I'm feeling threatened by? And it was just like, oh, well, just because kind of like what I said earlier, I don't portray myself as a very sexually alluring person. I am more of like, you know, comfort girl next door vibes, which I like. It's
Yeah.
absolutely fine. I don't know if that's like totally the box I'm gonna put myself in, but like versus someone who is like maybe more done up, more classically beautiful or whatever. So it's just like, oh, so I'm this imaginary woman that we're putting in my head that I feel like I'm not.
Those
Am
are
I worried
scary.
that Nick is gonna run away with her? Yeah.
Mm.
And then I was like, well, I'm not worried because he would just tell me if his feelings changed. Because that was also a funny joke we had for a little bit where it's just like, hey, you figure out that you're just actually gay and that you've just been dating women because you thought you were supposed to. It's all cool, man. I won't
Yeah.
hate you for it. We all are
Yeah.
on our journey. So then alternatively, like if there's just one day where you like kind of figure out that you're just like not in love and we shouldn't be doing this, like that's gonna suck. It's gonna be hurting. But also, like, I'd rather you tell me than us live in this like
Yeah.
weird bubble of like, because that was always my thing with when I was first dating him. I was like, I always like every day I would check in with myself to be like, were there any red flags that I didn't like and that I'm just putting up with because right now I'm riding the high of being made out with, and
Yeah.
there never was. So like I just kind of kept dating him, but it was the moment of just being like, you know, this is nice, but could this be better? And
Yeah.
in the nicest way.
Yeah.
Could this be better?
I think
And
it's a
if it
great question to
can,
ask. Yeah.
yeah, if it can, is it a like no it can't, so therefore get out of there, or is it like or is it just like it can and let's talk about it? Because
Yeah.
you know, I've been in a relationship with Nick for 8 years, so we've had
Yeah.
our dry spells of like, you know, bodies changing, like I don't really believe in libido anymore because I've read Come As You Are. So um but like, you know, the change in sexual like drive a little
Our
bit, like
seasons.
are
Yeah.
we aligning? Yeah, our
Yeah.
seasons. And so like I and like, you know, also birth control messing with hormones and
For
wanting to
sure.
have sex and all that stuff. So like having gone through all that, even more so now, I'm just like as long as I love you and that we can get there, we just
Yeah.
gotta create the right circumstance for physical intimacy. And I don't think that's an impossible ask. And
Yeah.
if one day it just becomes like there's something that's not right anymore, like it's gonna hurt and I'll take it personally, but also, well, then I'll go find someone that it does work with, and then I will feel
Right.
better and you will feel better because we're not trapped in misery together.
Absolutely.
That's my nightmare.
Same. Well, same. And the reason that I have stayed away from normative relationships, you know, and I'm 35 now, and people are like, "Are you okay being single?" And I'm like, what you don't really know is I have this whole hidden life, like full of
Yeah.
lovers who I am very
Yeah.
certain are a certain type of honest with me. Like, oh, hot
Mhm.
take. Ooh, am I saying this out loud? This is like a fresh thought from as I was falling asleep last night. But like,
I'm
in
ready.
some ways, I'm not saying all committed relationships, but in many ways, I feel like the connections that I have with my sex work clients are more real. I'm using air quotes because all realities are their own truth. But
Mhm.
for me, what I value in a connection, what I value in what feels real to me is feeling like I get to see the parts of that person that they want to authentically express, and they are brave enough to share with me like their true selves, like how they want to express. And I love knowing the weird things that people are into, and I love touching them in the places they want to be touched, and I love when they want to touch me in ways that align. And I get so sad because I am the receptacle of so many, you know, I love receiving stories, and I have received a lot of stories about how very committed and very in love partners lie to each other, not just constantly, but like live lies. And my greatest fear is to be in one of those relationships. So when people are like, "Oh, you're single," I'm like, "Oh, you're married and you guys don't talk," you know. And that's my own fear and my projected fear. I know, like, I'm hearing your relationship stories. I've heard many good stories where I'm like, "Aha, you guys talk, so it's possible. Where there's one, there's more. Okay, my best friend has a good one. Okay, they talk a lot. That's good," you know. And so that communicated, because I only want to be deeply committed to someone if I feel that I will be along for the entire journey of our changing. You know, I want it to go both ways. So I love that you have that. I would love to hear how that informs your sex life in a specific way. Like, what do you love about sex? Or start with, what is sexy? That could be both either a definition and or just like the things you find sexy. What is sexy to Avalon?
So this is the fun part about my brain that I find fun, is that the things I find sexy in my brain do not correlate to what is sexy to me in person, at least not yet. Maybe there's room for growth.
Yeah, always.
Because
There always
a
is.
lot of a lot of the like books that I like to read, a lot of the fan fiction, a lot of the media that I like to ingest now that has romance in it in any kind of capacity. I love me an enemies to lovers. I love me some like I
Mm.
kind of hate you, but ooh, if we could fuck, that would probably solve a lot of problems. I think it really boils down to me just passion. I love like people being overcome with like the need to be physical because I
Mhm.
feel that like mostly with my partner, but I feel it so infrequently with other people. So I'm just like to have that feeling with somebody else, ugh, it's magic, I think. And so it's just funny to like narrow down the trope in my life where I'm just like, I don't have an enemies to lovers relationship with my partner at all. We are very, very friendly to one another. But that's why I think the brat comes out because I'm like, no, I need you to hate me just a little bit so that way this like the tension can build a little
That's
bit,
a fun game.
But
Yeah.
yeah. And what's funny is that we've also learned that he's a brat though, so we're just two brats, and it's sometimes it just doesn't align up too well. But it's fun to play in sometimes because then every once in a while he'll be bratty to me, and I'm mad that he's being bratty because I'm like, well, no, I'm baby. You're supposed to
Yeah.
let me be the brat, and then that makes me become dominant, which is what he wants to begin
Yeah.
with because
Yeah.
we all have our taste, and so it's a fun push and pull that we have with that. But with I think it's gonna sound so funny and cheesy too, because like with Nick, because we've been partners for so long, like we have this shit down to a science, like we could like, we know how we can touch each other to get each other
I
going, and
don't
it can
know.
be
I've never been in a
okay.
relationship that was well
Sorry.
communicated enough, long enough. So I would love to hear
Okay.
what would the moves be if you were like, all right, we have whatever the standard amount of time is for mutual satisfaction, or maybe you only have 20 minutes. I don't know if we put a
Yes.
constraint on it. Like start to finish, close
Right.
on and back, like have to be back off and on in 20 minutes. Like, do you know what to do? Or
Yes.
is there, okay.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. There's two things. So, like, one of the things in our relationship that we've had to work on is me coming on to him because I just kind of let the ball be in his court. But that also means that a lot of the times, if he comes to me and I'm not feeling the mood, he's kind of like, well, then I'm just getting a no a lot. So, like, can we even the playing field? So, for me, one of the ways that I like to come on to him is that I'll just get on the couch, but lay on my stomach and read a book, and my ass is just kind of out. So I'm like, if you see it,
so
if you
hot.
want to partake.
That's so hot. Also, one of my fantasies is to be getting fucked while I'm reading, and I'm supposed to keep reading out loud. Very good, but they're fucking me, and I'm supposed to not get distracted. But okay, that's so hot.
That is also a fantasy. We haven't done it yet because I get very shy. The moment that like it becomes like I'm too aware, like that's one of the things that I struggle with is that like I have to feel like I can't think about it being sexy. You know what I mean?
I do. Yeah.
But that's one of the ways. And then like other times I like working myself up and then going to him and being like, hey, you should just like feel what's going on. I don't know. But I always am aloof about it. And
you preempted my next question, which is how do you work yourself? Okay, but you keep going.
It's so good. Yeah. And those are kind of like we haven't played around with it too much in the last couple months because honestly life has been busy, but those are our go-tos. It's usually just like, hey, maybe like just take the hand and guide it to like the genital region to be like, oh, you're ready. Am I ready? Shall we try? And it takes a lot to get me out of my head. There's been a lot of practice and error and all that throughout the years. So like we found a very good system of if we don't have a lot of time, but we also want it, it's just like, okay, we go in the room, I get a toy on me so that way I can work my body up, but I'm also distracted because I'm giving him pleasure. So that distracts me from even the physicality that's happening to me. So then by the time I'm ready for some like penetration, like it's been maybe 10 minutes and then we can just kind of get to it. Like one of the things that I find really interesting, and I don't know if like, I don't know if it's like a medical thing, if like maybe there's like my vagina is like tilted or what have you, but for me I don't like missionary sex. It doesn't do much for me. It doesn't feel good. It's just not one of the positions I like. I like the intimacy of it when you're looking at your partner. But it just doesn't do much for my insides. So for me, I'm just like, no, like
come back and tell us when you've sampled like 30 to 50 more cocks, because I have discovered different positions with different partners and different shapes. Also, I had my first with a lover who was like a almost a right angle hook down, and that person really wanted. Okay, I'm not good at body thing. The opposite direction from what my intuition would have thought would have felt good. He really wanted like close-up missionary. And I was like, what? And that was interesting and strange. It was a very interesting experience. And then I had another hooked down person in the same week, and that one felt completely different. And they were like not that different. And so I think it also is like where it is on that person, the size of their body, the shape of them, their rhythm. Anyway, data gathering.
I love that different people.
Yeah.
I love that there's, and one day we'll sample some more.
Yeah, I mean, come back and give us an update because I'm always curious. But like, okay, so missionary, not the, but you like the intimacy of it. So it's not like off the table?
I like it's not off the table. Sometimes we'll start there and then I'll just be like, okay, time to turn over. I'd rather, because doggy has been the best.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, just what about, I love missionary to get teased where if it's a cock partner and their cock is like flipped up toward their belly button and they're just using it to rub against me, or like down, like they're not penetrating, but it's like a mixture between thigh sex and outer lip stimulation. And it's like, ooh, it might go in, but it's not going to go in, but it might go in. And in my teen years, that was how I didn't have sex and I didn't really know about pre-cum. And so that was like a really hot, that probably harkens back to that. But like, that's what, because then you still get all the intimacy.
Totally. Totally. No, that's one of the things I like, especially just because like, so I need a lot of work to loosen me up a little bit, so to speak, because penetration isn't always painful, but it can be. Because again, for me, it takes a lot to like self-lubricate if we want to just use what we got going on, which I like doing. I prefer it because I can get there. It just takes more time. Sometimes I can be too self-conscious of the time, but I love lube, but I also hate lube. I like it in the moment, but the moment I don't need it anymore, I'm like, get it off.
Oh, okay. I have a game that I play that I call Target Practice. I love Uber Lube. It's silicone based. I really like it because it's a great massage oil, but it's condom safe. And so it has a little, it just gives a small amount. It's kind of expensive, but it's a small amount at a time. They're not a sponsor. I wish they were. If anyone wants to write to Cheryl and be like, please go sponsor us, I would love that. But I put it like whatever the genital is. Sometimes it's me, sometimes it's someone else. But like whoever's genital it is, I put it right above, and then I go up like 3 or as long as my arm can reach, and I call it target practice. And I try to hit the target. And then, oh no, sometimes it's messy. Sometimes I don't get a bullseye right away. And so then I have to just make sure that it hits the target somehow. So that's my new favorite.
I love
and it's especially for partners who maybe have been miseducated about lube or have been fed sex negative things like, if she has to use lube, it means she's not attracted to you, but I'm like, actually, I'm just on my period and I have a period sponge in and everything, the lubrication is different at that point in my cycle. Or like it's early in the morning and sometimes I wake up super wet and sometimes I'm dry for like the first 3 hours, which I know from my masturbation regimes. Okay. So anyway, but sometimes it takes me a long time to naturally warm up too, and it depends on my hydration levels. Sometimes I'm in the desert and not hydrated.
Totally. Oh my God. Yeah. And plus like I love because morning sex is the best sex in my opinion, and you're not hydrated in the morning. Sometimes you gotta drink some water, you gotta use some lube, and you can get the job done. It's not gonna be a natural situation all the time. But I think we've reached a really good place with it now, because I learned about what are they called? I don't have one near me. The clitoral stimulator toys, the ones that kind of simulate like it's air puffing. Yes.
Yeah. So, some of them suck, some of them blow. Yeah. The clit toys.
Yeah, I never tried that until like a year or two ago. Funnily enough, my straight friend was like, you need to try this. And I was like, I've tried it a couple toys and they're all fine. I got my regime. But she's like, just try it. So I got a cheap version of one of them, which does the job. Cheap is only in the monetary value, not in how it's made. But that has been a game changer for sex with my partner, because it's so easy to place that while you're in different positions, especially doggy, because then that can be on my clit while he is like pounding into me, but I can be hands free. So then it just feels like overstimulation in the best kind of way, where it doesn't feel like I'm using a toy, so you can just be like lost in the moment of like, wait, everything feels good.
How is it hands free? Wait, you're laying on it, or are you up on your, or is it strapped to you? What? This is not
I am.
my least good skill is understanding mechanics
It's
from
all right.
descriptor words, which is maybe not the best thing for a podcaster.
It's all right. Well, and it also I have the thing of I know what I'm talking about because I do it all the time. But so doggy, I am on my knees, but there's a pillow against my we stack 3 or 4 pillows so that
So
way
good.
I'm laying on that.
Yeah.
And then the toy, because it's the size of a hand.
Uh-huh.
I put that in between my thighs. My thighs kind of keep it in place, but the
Okay.
pillow makes it to where it's not going to go forward.
Got it.
And then
Okay.
him
Oh,
going into me doesn't make it really move.
what
And if it
helpful
does move,
pillows.
it's just kind of moving around the clit area anyway,
Ooh.
which is just another bonus.
Okay. So you can put it directly on your clit. Because when I use those, it's a very it's too complicated for me to use a clit, one of those clit blower suckers in partnered sex, because it is so specific, because I have such a sensitive situation down there. But you can just leave it on and let it.
Yes. Well, I think for me, my clit is sensitive, but because I'm always in my own head, there's always ebbs and flows of being is it overstimulating? And then I go is this sexy? I'm constantly in and out of the physical sensations. So sometimes having the slight overstimulation keeps me present to the actual sexiness that is happening.
Yeah.
And it ebbs and flows. I used to be very sensitive, and not that it's good or bad to use toys or not use toys, but I didn't use toys for quite some time. I didn't need them, or didn't know that I wanted them or what have you. I just didn't use them. And as I've gotten older, and also just learning that I was an anxious person and dealing with my own headspace and the things of life, you change and you have different wants and needs when it comes to sexual stuff. So now toys are great because I can get overstimulated, but it's a good kind, because then I go oh, I can't think of anything else but this moment now and what is happening to me, because the toy is making that happen to me. And that's just really nice, because then it overrides any kind of did I do the dishes today? Did I?
Okay.
Is he having a good time? It takes all those thoughts away.
That's awesome.
But it doesn't always work. Sometimes it's too much, and then you just feel like you've gone numb down there. It's not always a winner, but it's often one for us.
Okay. Ooh, I love that. What else are you into? What else do you love? What else have you explored? What else is on your horizon?
Oh, what's on my horizon? Oh gosh, because that is the funniest thing that me and Nick tease each other about. We're not vanilla, but we are quite simple in our sexual practice. We've done I've penetrated him with toys, and it's good. It's not the same I think pleasure he gets out of having sex with people who actually have penises. So it's one thing that we just don't practice too much with each other, because I'm you can, if you want it from me, I will give it to you, but if you want it from, go get it. It's fine. I don't have the strength quite yet in my pelvic region to provide what you need.
It takes work. But I will say,
it takes work and practice.
A gentle 30-ish minute intense cardio workout 3 to 6 times a week, but sometimes I skip a couple weeks, has made a huge difference. Just my ability to thrust and to just be the fucking one completely changed. Completely changed when I got at least 30. Yeah, it's amazing. I'm oh, this is why I should have been exercising my whole life. I mean, it's cell turnover, it's energy, it's all of it. But I was now I am motivated.
Yeah, it's if someone had told me that sex could just be better from cardio workout, I would have done this years ago.
I'm they weren't teaching us the right things in elementary school.
No, but I really love neck biting. I just like biting in general, but neck biting, my neck is a super erogenous zone. I'm sure it's from all the vampire stuff I watched as growing up as a kid, but still, it's beautiful. I love it. Everybody should enjoy it, if they can. And I it's so funny. It's one of those questions to where you go what do I like? Yeah. I'm not in a context to where I'm thinking about it normally.
Are you a neck biter both directions? Also, who knows if the neck, that could be circular. Maybe you like the vampire stuff because your neck was someday we'll be bitten or get. Right. But do you give bites or receive them, or both? Egg. Yeah, exactly.
Both. I like both. But my partner he does not get pleasure from biting, but he'll let me do it because just heat of the moment. I think it always ties back to me about passion. I'm if I can't control myself and I want to bite you, that's so fun. That's so fun. My whole body is just this is the only way I can express it. Yeah.
I love biting too. I think it's also, some of us have specific sensory things that are very satisfied. I like biting. I like to get squished. I like intense sensations, in the right context. Yeah.
Yeah. I like it's funny. I feel like the only way that I like to be like squished is literally if I'm face down. If it's any
Yes.
other way, I feel like too claustrophobic, but face
Oh,
down, I'm
okay.
just like, it's fine. Do whatever you want.
Ooh,
I don't,
that's my favorite
as
way.
long as you're
Yeah.
holding me in that position, great.
Yeah.
Don't care.
Oh.
Um, it's one of those like borderline, like, yeah, you can use me as long as,
Yeah.
just do it.
Yeah.
As long as you're making me feel good, you can do whatever
I
you
love
want.
that.
Um, we've tried. I've tried restraints because I find them very sexy.
Uh-huh.
Like I've seen I've seen things with them. I love the idea of it in my head, but I panic when I am tied up. So it's taking
Mm.
practice, but we don't practice too often just because like most of the time we want to have fun, and sometimes practicing something that kind of makes you scared
Yeah.
ruins the mood. But
Yeah.
I love the idea of it. I think it's fun. But yeah, I found that like I get like kicky. I'm like all of a sudden I'm like, no,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
get off of me. It becomes very like fight or flighty. And I was like, I didn't know I had this in me, but apparently if I am restrained, we do not fawn or flight.
Yeah.
We kick.
Yeah. 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 There's a fight happening.
No.
Are there more things that you like to read about or hear about but not experience that you've tried?
I think we've never purposely tried. I think exhibitionism is very fun. I love the
Mm.
idea of messing around in a place you should not be messing around with. But the alternative, I mean, clearly I went to a bar
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
in the back room we did things.
That's hot.
But alternatively, like I am very like I'm like, I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to do something
I
that could
totally
get me in
relate.
trouble. But I
Like,
love the idea of that. Oh,
oh, I'm just like, I want to be naughty, but I want to know that I'm definitely not going to get caught
yeah.
because I don't want to actually be naughty.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that, and I just love because it for me and Nick, we often just like remove all the clothing very quickly because
I love to be
practice
naked.
mostly.
Yeah.
But I also love clothes stuff, like
Oh,
the
yeah.
tension that
Oh,
builds
yeah.
of like, oh, stuff hasn't come off yet, or like
Yeah.
they're starting
Playing
to come off
outside
piece by piece. But
panties. Yeah. Reaching through
yeah, it's
them.
so.
Seeing
Mm-hmm.
how wet stuff gets, whether it's pre-cum or my own lube. Like, I'm like,
Yes.
ooh. Or like seeing
Mm-hmm.
seeing a girlfriend kind of get wet through her dress, like she's not wearing panties, like, or
Yes.
me. I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Oh,
oh.
yes. That stuff is so fun to me because I love talk about sensory stuff. I love like soft clothing or like
Yes.
petticoats were my thing when I was younger. I was like, I love the
Mm.
way petticoats felt on me, like under a dress or whatever. And I was like, it's just so soft and I feel so
Yeah.
sensual right now.
Yeah.
So like that kind of stuff is so fun. I don't practice it too often because honestly, I just get caught up in the moment.
Totally.
But one of the things I love, like thigh highs.
Oh, yeah.
So fun to wear. It makes you feel so sexy, even if you're
Mhm.
not even trying,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
keeps your feet warm.
I was just
And
gonna
I know
say
that
that.
kind
I
of
was like, especially in the wintertime. Sexy
yes.
and practical.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about parts of your body that aren't necessarily like the obvious erogenous zones, but like you said, neck, you also like kisses, or is it more
Mhm.
fighting? Are you into feet things? Have you done a foot job? What about motorboating? Do you want to have a dick between your titties? Like what? I don't know. I'm just throwing out ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. I well, I have small boobies, so no dick is it can't well, I guess it could
You
now.
could do
They're a
different
little
things.
bigger than they used to be.
Yeah.
Anything's
Nipple
possible.
sensitivities. I
But
don't know. Earlobes.
I do have yeah, it's weird. I have sensitive nipples, but they're like it's sensitive, not sensitive. Like they're
Ah.
very reactive, and then all of
Ah.
a sudden they're very sensitive. So there's not like a gradual thing. All of a sudden it'll just be very sensitive, and that's been
Like
really nice.
painful or nice? Okay, nice sensitive, like orgasmic sensitive?
Nice. Yeah.
Oh. Ooh.
Almost. We haven't gotten there yet, but I feel
Yet?
like if we tried hard enough, it could happen.
Well, there's no
Which is
rush,
very
but
exciting.
that's an exciting
Yeah.
exploration because I have some friends who have that, and I've interviewed some people who have that. I don't have it. You could like
Yeah.
basically chew on my nipples, and I would basically have like accidentally bled, and I'm like, hey, wait, stop that, you naughty fit,
Yeah.
no blood,
Yeah.
but I didn't know. We
Yes.
didn't know. We were caught. We were overcome in the heat
Yeah.
of the moment. So
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, that's
But
cool. Wow. Ooh, so on your
and
horizons.
then yeah. That just like I think just more I think honestly practically like just exploring more of the brat dynamics, some like a little bit of submissiveness but not really because like I said it leans far more brat where I'm like no I have to give and take because
Yeah.
if I try to just submit then I'm just like well all right I guess you
Yeah.
win. What a fun battle this was. It wasn't one, it was just me submitting. But I think that's like one of the things I'm learning, having dated other people too, and like dated people, well, not dated, gone on dates with other people of different genders too. It's just like, if the dynamic isn't that they can like play with me in that way, then I'm just like, this is probably not going to go anywhere because it's
I
not
see.
fun.
Right.
It's just, I find that I'm not the type of person to take lead. So
Yeah.
just,
I'm like, I'll do it in the right context, and I have to really be the right context. And the rest of the time, I just would like to be contained, because I contain people a lot.
Yeah. I will say that like with my best friend, when we had sex for the first time where it was just the two of us, like I ended up taking the lead on that, but it was mostly I think out of like, like when you have that new, like, I've never had this before, so I'm just gonna
try.
I'm just gonna grab all the things and try. So it was that kind of situation, and it was nice, but again, it's just like maybe like it's so contextual. Like that one was a little bit easier to do with, I think, just my preconceived gender roles. So like since it was another woman, I was like, we can push and pull these dynamics a little bit more, even though I still want to be more of the submissive one. But I'm like, I got you. We can make this happen.
Yeah.
But
I totally hear that.
Definitely totally interested in trying to find more connections with people of any gender, but just, to subvert more of the gender roles and all that stuff. Cause I think I find myself more drawn to queer spaces than I am trying to futz around with people who, maybe they discovered they were straight. It's a little bit of the bi person in me. I just don't believe it. I'm like, I just don't think you've done the work to understand what your sexual desires are. It's straight phobic. I'm so sorry. I just don't believe you.
I totally have. I mean, I've definitely had some extensive conversations with people. I'm like, maybe you are, but also, there's contingencies to be explored and like narratives to be unpacked. And I'm not saying everyone has to be queer. I'm just saying at my perfect sex party, they are, because I don't want anyone there to get yucked or to have, like I want the vibe to be like 100% good. So the ones I always fantasize are full of like queer people, or at least heteroflexible people, who are showing up with the spirit of like hotness. And a lot of people I've talked to who identify as straight have that, they're like, oh yeah, well, or they'll be like, well, I'm totally straight, and like I loved it when he was sucking my cock, and I'm like, okay.
You're like,
I'm like, all right, whatever label, you're right, we don't have to be into labels, whatever makes you feel comfy and seen. Okay. And
definitely.
I think for me too, I'm really attracted to open-mindedness and non-judgmental attitudes.
Yes.
So when people are just like, hi, like I really, really appreciate that. Any other like details, sensual things, toy specifics that you just love?
I mean, I love a good clit stimulator. I really prefer though vibrators that are like kind of molded to be on your clit or in just your pelvic area.
Yeah.
That is like we said earlier, cupping. It's just like cupping, but now you got an extra like stimulation happening.
Cupping with rumble. That. Yeah.
Or like my go-to thing as a woman coming into her own was just pillow humping. It's a practice and it works, and I've
heard of this. I've heard of this. I have not yet humped a pillow to like completion, but I've since people told me about it, I will regularly just sit with stuff between my legs, or sometimes I'm like taking off pants and they'll just end up bunched between my legs, and I'll like wiggle around just to see. I love that. I love that. Are you a humper? Like, do you sit on it, hump? Are you like laying down towards it, or are there different methods?
It's mostly like me on top, and usually I have like a towel or like a designated like piece of fabric that I've saved for such an occasion that is soft. Because if it is soft, like for some reason that's helpful. It's just like, I don't know if it's because honestly, I don't know if it's the pressure. I don't know if it is the grinding, but like, I think again, like the softness plus all the motioning and just kind of, I think like letting your body kind of know what it's doing without trying to tell it, I think always appealed to me. So just kind of being, again, overcome. It's like the body, this feels good and it's doing it, and you don't have to think about it too hard. But yeah, no, pillow humping was that was the thing I accidentally discovered as a tween, and then I was like, what's happening? And then it's a go-to. Never humped a couch or anything, but pillows. Those were the way.
Yeah.
But
What about solo sex? It sounds like there's some toy play. Do you like, is solo
Mhm.
sex fun for you? Or do you feel like because you have a satisfying partner at your fingertips and pussy lips that that's your go-to? Like what?
I because I'm the kind of person who can so far only come once really hard during a sexual session with
Mhm.
people.
Yeah.
I and myself. I can come like multiple times a day,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's not quick succession. We need a lot of come down
Yeah.
time.
That's my norm.
No pun intended. But so when I'm by myself, if I'm truly by myself, like I am today, because my husband is working out of town, what's great is that I find my natural, like non-perceived way is that like I will come multiple times a day through a toy just because maybe I'll go around the house. It'll just be in my pants as I'm getting stuff done. And I'm like, sweet, love that for me. I
I
love
love
not
that for
thinking
you.
about it.
Yeah.
That's
Ooh.
the underlying current. I want to be thinking about it, but not thinking about it. That's like, I like the orgasm to happen to me, not like, I don't
Oh.
want to fight it. I
Yeah.
don't want to, though
Yeah.
edging is fun. I will say
Yes.
edging is
Oh, I
fun.
love edging.
But because I come quite hard,
Yeah.
if I like say that I'm not trying to edge, but since I come quite hard, if I try to edge, sometimes it really messes with the kind of orgasm that I'm having, and that can most of the time it's bad in the
Oh.
fact that it'll just happen to me and it's quick and it's hard, but I'm just
Oh.
like, oh, that isn't
I
quite
don't like that.
I
I
don't
call
get
those
I don't get
inverted.
the
Like they're
wishes.
like it happens, but it doesn't feel
Yes,
good. And I'm like,
yes, it's like
ah.
a
Yeah.
sneeze
But
that
for
got caught
me,
in your throat or
edging
something.
is opposite. Yes, that's exactly how to describe it. But edging, especially if I like see how long I can ride the edge, because 2
Yes.
years in a row, I've done like entire month of September, I'll edge myself, and every day I will touch myself in a different way. So like last year, I built up and I
Ooh.
went like only hands the first week, or I was on my period, so then I did something different. But like whatever, I had a whole
Yeah.
progression, but it was a different way to explore myself every day. This past year, I did hands toy, hands toy, hands toy, you know, and I just I
Yeah.
don't let myself come because I realize it is a way to kind of catapult me out of my habits, and I resensitize and I learn so
Interesting.
much new stuff about myself. And truly, without an assignment, I'm like too impatient to like explore myself. I'm like, somebody else explore me. I'm busy
Same.
like helping other people all the time. Like somebody else explore me.
Yeah.
Tie me down and use me, you know. But that's a way that I'll do
Yes.
it for myself, and it feels fun. So I hear that.
Yes. Oh, and not to like totally backtrack, but I was just that
Do it.
for some reason reminded me. One of the things I love reading about, which is why I think it's very funny that my partner and I like evolved to like a polyamorous relationship, is like, I love reverse harems. Give me men who also make out with each other, but then
Yes.
I'm the only
Yes, yes,
woman.
yes, yes, yes,
I
yes, yes.
love that shit. In my
Yes.
perfect world,
Oh,
like, have you seen that like meme that's like, I want a boyfriend and I want my boyfriend to have a boyfriend? And that's like, that's my
no,
dream.
but
I'm like, I wish
yes.
that could be the
Well, you could have,
it's that
maybe
is
that's in your future. I'm sure that's
it
in your
could be.
future. Let's believe
It's just
it.
hard to meet people, but I believe
No.
it's possible.
Let Nick meet
But,
people and he can bring you. Let
uh,
him be the boyfriend magnet. And just,
see,
yeah.
he's more antisocial than I am.
Oh,
He's the
damn.
shy
Well,
little
we
being.
can all
So then
evolve.
it's the thing
Okay.
where exactly. I have, I wish it for him, and I'm also because he's like, you're just gonna have to find someone if that's what you really want. I'm like, oh God, you're so.
Okay.
And he's the one who works far more than me too. So I'm just like, I have to be the social butterfly.
Oh.
Fine, I will do my best.
Well, just so you
But
know, my long-term plan is to create some sort of like, I'm calling it a super brothel, but it's a creation pleasure space where like everyone can
that's
come
fun.
together. And, now I'm
Yes.
like, yes, of course. Of course there's the harem rooms, like of course there's the
Yes.
and obviously those ones
Yeah.
are queer, so we can just like I would want to be the center of attention in both kinds of harems.
Yes.
Like and I also would like to
Yes.
participate in both kinds. I'll put on a strap, like
Yes.
so
Yeah. I
I'll
think like
mask
I
it
feel
up.
like group settings I've never had like more than like a threesome. So
Mhm.
I'm not sure for me, but like I do think that's the lovely thing I see about group settings and like group porn that I've watched. I'm just like that's so fun because again, for me I'm like, oh, it takes the overstimulation out of my
Yeah.
brain because there's just so much to do, so
Well,
much
it's
to try, so much to
so
touch.
overstimulating. You can't even. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just like this is it like I'll take a throuple, I'll take a quadruple, whatever
Yeah.
it will be. Like as long as we're
Oh,
all having fun and consenting, I am here for it.
I fucking love
But
that.
hasn't happened yet. We're still just a couple.
Yes,
R.I.P.
well,
But
yet is the key word. So, okay,
yes.
and on that note, what else is on your adventure bucket list? And this can be sexual, but also non-sexual. Like, what else do you want to experience? Or, you know, I often always want to combine them. I'm like, well, of course I want to travel to far off locations and do, you know, blowjobs and receive going downs on me off a cliff or something. You know, I think about cliffs a lot. I know in safe ways, but you know, what's on you? What else are like noodles through your heads on lists that would be fun for you to experience?
God. Well, my bestie, she has gone to sex parties, which I have not done. And I'm also not sure if I don't think I would not enjoy. I just wonder about my social anxieties, how that would play out. Open to it, but I'm also like, do I need to protect myself mentally from this situation? But that is something that I think could be very fun because again, it's a very, those are safe, hopefully, mostly safe spaces to kind of explore different things. And since I want to explore because I don't know what I like. I'm very much, I love that I don't know what I like in terms of like, I haven't had a lot of partners. So I'm open, just hit the mic. I'm open to trying new things to see what I'm into because how am I supposed to know? I've only had the like 2 romantic partner. Well, you know, a couple, like a fling if we count the bar thing, which I do, but it just not as emotionally prevalent in my brain. But that is kind of the thing. It's like I've started to dabble in like just sexting with people on dating apps. So like there's people who are like in Scotland or something, and I'm like, great, I can imagine your accent, and I'm all about it. Thank you so much. I love accents. At this point, I'm just like, give me an accent. You can do whatever voice kink stuff. That's what I'd love to like explore more of because audio porn is so good, and I'm like, but to have that like in your ear and then also get the physical pleasure from it.
Ooh.
Please and thank you. Please and thank you.
Fuck yeah.
So it'd be fun if it ever happens. There was one guy I chatted to for a little while who was from Scotland. We're not like, we haven't blocked each other or anything, so maybe we'll pick up conversation again. But I'm like, if this like little relationship withstands time, who knows? Maybe one day when I go to Scotland, I've got a little makeout buddy that I can just have a new relationship with. But I think I'm open to really anything. I honestly though, I really want to try dating more women because like I've had so much experience with or varying experience with men, and it's been fine. It's harder I've found to find women who are open to my my poly where I am located at least. So it's harder to date, but I would love to. Women are great. I love women. I want to date more women. They're so pretty. I don't,
so pretty.
Try something different. And
they're
also like, yes. And like I love like I don't love like boxing myself in a label, but I love trying to figure out where my sexual fluidity lies. Like, is it just that I find women pretty, or am I romantically interested in women? Like, where are the like gray areas for that? I love dissecting that in my own brain because I'm like, do I like men or do I just like Nick? I don't know. So like it changes from day to day.
It's a moving target. Day to day for sure. Definition of fluidity. Oh, I love that. Ugh. Yeah. How fun to track too. Like what a thing to pay attention to.
Yeah. I should journal more about it, quite honestly, but it's all up here. I'm always thinking about it.
I just listened to a Huberman Lab episode where they talked about how journaling or talking to another person is very highly beneficial versus just letting stuff bounce around up here. Because when we organize our thoughts, we like make discoveries, and especially in like rumination situations, it helps us kind of like get those scary voices out. So I've always been a big journaler. Oh my God, you've shared so much wonderful stuff. So to bring it home for us, this is just a brainstorm. Well, it's a 2-part question. The first part's a brainstorm. The second part is a you question. So how do you think that we can all together co-create a more connected, loving, woo-filled world? And like, how do you like to spread ripples of love?
Ooh, love that question. Those questions.
Thanks.
I think to spread a woo-filled world, I feel like we have, because I hate to, in my head, I'm going to explain my thought process. I'm thinking kind of politically right now just because it's so prevalent at this time of year, just generally speaking. So to me, it really is just like expectations, like being able to communicate expectations and kind of, I feel like we as a society should really try to educate and gear ourselves towards looking towards romantic relationships the same way we would platonic ones. I think like learning that like community is so important, and that like romantic and like I it's so hard to articulate. Just that to me, platonic could lead to romantic. It could lead to physical intimacy or just a non-physical romantic love for someone. And I think we should know that from the get-go. Like if I was a kid and I understood, like a kid, I mean like a teenager, like I was so divisive with like genders and with how I made friends because of their gender even. Like I think it really hindered the way that I built my own communities around me. I didn't have very close friends for quite some time because I expected men wanted something from me. And I'm not here to say that, like, you know, the world's perfect and you shouldn't be, you know, safe about who you're making friends with and what they might expect from you. But I think that's the thing, is that like if I'm talking to a man, I don't think like the default expectation or fear is that he might be romantically interested in me, so I should not try to pursue a platonic relationship with them. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done with hetero things
Right.
because of that. Because, you know, people are people and they're just seeking to be seen and to be with other people, whether that's physical or not. And I would just wish that the world as a whole could allow that more. I need a better word than platonic in this instance, but just I think if we were able to approach every relationship, no matter the gender, in that way, I think it would help build a lot of strong, lasting relationships, even if people are straight. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like
Totally.
you need to be seeking friends. You need to be seeking people who truly see you and accept you and will grow with you. And I think a lot of that is hindered by the boxes we put people in because of their gender.
I think you just said a very wise thing. Friendship. Because friendship isn't like definitively platonic or sexual.
Right.
And also
It's fluid.
relationships that start out sexual until death do us part may end up platonic or like best friendy, and that's very normal too. And we're in a society that tells us that's a problem, even though many people are okay with it. And they're like, you know, and so I think, wow. Yes, and I have, but you also helped me hit upon something I've been doing semi-unconsciously, but I'm like, the world is full of friends I just haven't met yet, you know, because in my experience, of course, I look like me and I have the personality that I have, and so wherever I go, people are pretty nice to me, and I'm like, wow, these nice people in this world, and then, you know, and then I talk to other people, and everyone's having a bad time right now, you know, in many various ways, or because humans are wired to kind of notice the negative first because we're built to protect ourselves from threats. That's what they'll talk about first, you know. And so wow, what an astute observation. Let us connect and make friendship. And like, I know it almost sounds reductive, but like that's actually not how our social norms are set up. And I
don't think so. No. I feel like there's a lot of goalposts to being married and like having children, and I don't find fault in that theoretically, but I find fault in it practically. I think it sets people up to expect that the romantic, and I'm going to put romantic in quotations because I don't know that they are when they're in their worst form, like those relationships where you're just like, this is what you do, you get married, you have kids, etc. Like default, it sets you up for a lot of failure. Where and you know, I could talk about that for like another 2 hours, to be honest, but
I might do a whole other section on romance because that's I'm increasingly curious. Like, okay,
I know it's fun to talk about, but I suffer from it too. I'm very hesitant to start up platonic relationships with men because not because, you know, I'm sitting there like, oh, you're straight, you want something. I had those instances when I was a teenager where I thought I was friends with someone, but they were just romantically interested in me the entire time and I wasn't. And then I had to be like, oh, you think that me talking to you and engaging with you is a come on when it's not. And so there's a lot of like, I don't think that's everybody's experience, mind you, but it sucked for me. So I'm just like, if we can take that suck away from anybody else, the bad suck, then I would prefer to do so.
Absolutely.
And I think it would lead to better relationships for people in general when you're able to communicate that, like, hey, I'm into you. Can we try? Or I'm not into you, but can we be friends? And if not, then okay.
Oh, I connect. Okay, but how do you like to spread ripples of love?
I love just chatting with people about stuff like this. I think it's very fun. It always is insightful to me because people will like you've like vocalize so much stuff that like I didn't know how to put into words. So I'm just like, thank you. That's beautiful. I love it. And I love one thing, it's nerdy, but I love role playing with my friends. Play a game where like
Yeah.
you flirt with each other, but it doesn't necessarily come off the page or off the chat or what have you, but just
Yeah.
exploring those things together. When I was a teenager, I did that stuff, but didn't know that what I was seeking was just trying to play out scenarios to understand what I liked. And when you
Yes.
can do that as an adult, what's great is you can
Yes.
also just flirt with your friends and maybe you can make out with them. It's a
Yes.
great system.
Yes. Play is all
But
about exploring contingencies, which is helpful to our mental, physical, and
Yes.
emotional health because it is how we work through social problems. And the social problems are evolutionarily like why humans are, that's why we are where we are, you know, for better or worse. So it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, we need the play. If we stop playing, then our brains do not grow socially or problem solvingly as
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. And I always try to, like, at least in my partnership, I think the way that I spread any kind of wooing is just like making sure that I'm present and not going like, oh, well, we're established, we're married, so like we're fine. It's like, no, like you are partners in this life. It's like I've had to learn like platonically to be there for my friends, even where I've had to be like, oh, I need to check in more. I need to be active. And it's hard. I'm not saying that like, you know,
Ugh.
everybody can be perfect about it, but I
Yeah.
think it's important to treasure the relationships you have. And if they're not working for you, to communicate to them in the best possible way you can to try to either fix it or just kind of, you know, figure out what you want from people. Because I hate expectations being put upon me that I did not agree to. And also, I hate hurting people's feelings. So I
Yeah.
like expectation talk. So we can be like, are we okay? Can we have a safe space to discuss why we're not okay?
Yeah. Damn, that is
So,
powerful. Wow. Avalon, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom on woo. And thank you for sharing your sex stories.
thank you for having me.
Lovely woo humans, that is our show. Remember to follow your hearts and follow your parts and follow me in family-friendly internet places at Lunar Woohoo, or if you're in naughty internet places, at Lunar Secrets. Visit howtowoo.fyi for links to everything. You can support our awesome show on Patreon for early ad-free episodes. You can worship me virtually on OnlyFans or Sextpanther, or we can work together in person in a number of excellent creative capacities. You can also ask a question, share a story, or apply to be a guest at howtowoo.fyi if you want to be on the show. And tell a friend to help us grow. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and let me know how you're spreading ripples of love.